Kim sang and walked the path of shadows, a debt collector known for his chilling efficiency and unwavering resolve. He moved through the city's crowded streets, a lone figure whose presence seemed to command a quiet respect or perhaps a fearful distance. His steps led him down a dimly lit alley, a place where the city's underbelly conducted its business away from prying eyes. Inside, a group of men gambled, their faces etched with desperation, oblivious to the ominous arrival at their door. He had come for President Heo, his voice cutting through the smoky air, demanding attention from the startled men. One of President Heo's men quickly reprimanded a subordinate for his disrespectful tone, a subtle acknowledgement of Sang-an's fearsome reputation. Sang-an held a hammer, a tool of his trade, and calmly asked if the debt calculation for 109 million won was correct. When one of the men lunged at him, Sang-an met the attack with a swift, brutal punch, his resolve unbreakable. His fist connected with bone-jarring force, a single blow that sent ripples of shock through the room, silencing all resistance. The man crumpled to the ground, unconscious, a stark example of the consequences of challenging Sang-an. The other men stared, wide-eyed and terrified, realizing the true nature of the man standing before them. Sang-an stepped onto the fallen man, the hammer still in his grip, his gaze cold and unyielding. President Heo pleaded, convinced Sang-an wouldn't kill him, believing that debt provided a strange kind of immunity. Sang-an raised the hammer high, its shadow falling over the terrified President Heo, a silent threat hanging in the air. But he reassured the man with a chilling calm that he had no intention of ending his life. Not yet. President Heo's face contorted in a mix of fear and relief, understanding the implied, prolonged suffering that awaited him. Back at his office, the building stood as a monument to his relentless success, a place where debts were always settled. Sang-an entered, carrying 2 heavy bags, each filled with the day's collections, a testament to his unmatched collection rate. His colleagues cheered, praising his perfect record, calling him the best loan shark they had ever seen. He removed his shirt, revealing a body scarred by countless battles, a physical manifestation of his brutal career. One of his men presented a new case, a seemingly simple debt of 10 million won from a young female teacher. The resident registration card for Kim Won-in lay on the desk, a name that would soon shatter Sang-an's carefully constructed world. He left the office, the new case in hand, a sense of foreboding settling over him as he prepared for the next collection. His footsteps echoed down the empty stairwell, each step taking him closer to a confrontation he never anticipated. He remembered an old man, years ago, begging for mercy, clinging to his last hope, his pleas falling on deaf ears. The man had groveled in a gambling den, desperate to protect his wife's insurance money, but Sang-an had remained unmoved. He often felt like a grim reaper, collecting not just money, but fragments of souls, leaving behind only despair. He had walked away, leaving the man to his fate, his heart hardened by the realities of his work. The old man's curses still echoed in his mind, vowing that Sang-an would surely fall into hell for his merciless deeds. Sang-an paused, a cigarette between his fingers, lost in thought, the weight of his past heavy on his shoulders. He remembered his own father, groveling before debt collectors, a pathetic sight that had deeply scarred him. A young Sang-an had watched, helpless, as his father's desperation had consumed him, leading to his tragic end. In that moment of profound despair, young Sang-an had made a decision. He would become the one who collected, not the one who was collected from. Now, he looked at the new debt file, a sense of unease creeping in as he recognized the name printed on the document. His colleague asked if he was okay, noticing Sang-an's unusual reaction to the routine case. The colleague, eager for the new recruit to gain experience, was unaware of the profound personal significance of this particular debt. At Solbit High, Kim Ayan walked the school hallways, burdened by a secret debt and a silent plea for rescue. She spoke to Sang-an, her voice laced with an unspoken desperation, the weight of her struggles evident in her eyes. Sang-an's face remained impassive, but a storm raged within him as he faced his own sister, a debtor. The name on the card, Kim Ayan, was undeniably hers, confirming his worst fears and the bitter irony of the situation. He looked at her, his gaze intense, a complex mix of duty and deep-seated pain swirling in his eyes. She called him Oppa, a term of endearment that only deepened the emotional chasm between them in this professional context. Other teachers interrupted, their arrival a brief reprieve from the raw tension of their exchange. One teacher explained her presence, visiting for a student exchange program, oblivious to the family drama unfolding. Sang-an and Ayan stood back to back, a symbol of their fractured relationship, each carrying their own heavy burdens. Ayan looked over her shoulder, a flicker of hope, fear, and resentment in her eyes as she regarded her brother. Sang-an stood outside the school, smoking, the bitter taste of his past mingling with the harsh reality of his present. and confronted him, her voice raw with anger and grief, demanding to know why he would become the very thing that destroyed their father. Her face was a mask of anguish, tears welling in her eyes as she accused him of losing his mind. She told him she wanted nothing to do with a garbage brother like him. Her words a cruel echo of his own self-loathing. Sung-in smoked in silence, the decades since their father's death having done little to heal their wounds, only deepening them. She begged him to save her, her voice a desperate whisper, revealing the true depth of her despair. He looked at his phone, waiting for her, a cold dread creeping into his heart as he anticipated her next move. His eyes, reflected in the phone screen, widened in sudden horror as he saw a notification that changed everything. The phone slipped from his grasp, crashing to the ground, a chilling sound that punctuated his sudden, desperate realization. He sprinted, his face a mask of fierce determination, his glasses reflecting the frantic urgency in his eyes. His powerful strides blurred across the pavement, a man possessed by a singular, overriding mission. He ran towards the school building, his gaze fixed on a distant point, a desperate race against time. On the roof, Ayan stood on the edge, a tiny figure silhouetted against the setting sun, ready to jump. Her face was serene, a haunting calm that suggested a final, irreversible decision had been made. Sang-an leaped, a blur of motion, defying gravity as he launched himself towards the building. Ayan's feet were poised on the precipice, the point of no return, just a breath away. He landed on the roof, barely breaking stride, his eyes locked on his sister, his heart pounding in his chest. She had felt trapped in a hell within the classroom, a place of torment that pushed her to the brink. She fell, her body arcing against the sky, as Sang-an reached out, a desperate attempt to snatch her from the void. Down she plummeted, the wind rushing past her, her final moments unfolding in slow motion. His hand stretched out, a desperate grasp for salvation, a silent prayer against the inevitable. He remembered again his father, kneeling before the debt collectors, a scene of humiliation etched into his memory. He saw a young Ayan crying, and a younger version of himself, helpless, unable to protect her. A wave of raw anguish washed over him, the realization that his sister was about to suffer the same fate as his father. With a surge of strength, he reached her, grabbing her arm just before she hit the ground, pulling her back from the edge. The students in the classroom sat, oblivious, their chatter filling the air, unaware of the life and death struggle outside. Sang-an appeared at the classroom door, a dark silhouette, his presence casting a sudden, ominous quiet over the room. The students looked up, their expressions shifting from nonchalance to surprise, then to a growing sense of unease. Ayan's fall, a symbolic representation of her despair, still lingered in Sang-an's mind, a torment he could not forget. He knew the classroom had been a living hell for her, a truth he now carried with a burning resolve. He surveyed the students, his gaze sweeping over each face, seeing not just young people, but faces of complicity. A female student, casually scrolling on her phone, represented the indifference that had allowed Ayan's suffering to fester. He introduced himself as the new teacher, his voice calm, but with an underlying current of steel. A chilling smile spread across his face, a predatory glint in his eyes that promised retribution. He declared himself a loan shark, the kind who collects debts even from hell itself. And now, these students were his new debtors. Kim sang. An was a man consumed by grief and a burning need for justice, his sister's death leaving an unpayable debt of sorrow. A powerful assemblyman, Parkman Cheol, found himself groveling before a notorious loan shark, begging for a mere 10 billion won. Hwang Byung-hyun, the chairman of Chunhong Capital, saw through the politician's desperation, finding humor in his fall from grace. He had been brought to a lavish place, but Hwang knew such meetings only happened when money was involved, especially with a congressman. Something far more important had come up, forcing Hwang to abruptly cut short their dinner and attend to another, more pressing engagement. It was a somber occasion, a stark reminder of the fragile line between life and death, the funeral of Kim Won-an. Many gathered to pay their respects, including the very loan shark who had just dismissed a powerful politician. Kim Sung-un, Ayan's brother, stood by the coffin, his face etched with pain, quietly thanking the old man for coming. Hwang dismissed the gratitude, his expression unreadable, as if the act of mourning was simply another transaction. Later, the two men sat in a quiet restaurant, Hwang eating calmly while Sang-an watched him, lost in thought. Hwang mentioned Sang-an's sister, recalling how he thought their ties had been cut when Sang-an started working for him. He mused on the enduring truth that blood was thicker than water, then asked about the bastards who had tormented Ayan. Sang-an's face tightened with a dark resolve, his eyes burning with a silent rage at the memory of his sister's suffering. He declared his intention to confront those responsible himself, stating they had incurred a great unforgivable debt. And then made a surprising request. He wanted Hwang to pull strings so he could become a teacher. Huang burst into laughter, but Huang's amusement quickly faded, his expression turning sharp as he reminded Sung-an that this favor, too, would be a debt. Sung-an accepted without hesitation, his resolve to avenge his sister outweighing any personal cost. And so, Kim sang, and began his new life as a teacher, taking charge of grade 3, class 2. He looked out at the faces of his new students, a silent promise forming in his mind. Among these seemingly ordinary students he knew were the ones who had driven Kim Il-ain to her tragic end. The students, however, seemed oblivious, complimenting their new teacher's handsome looks and impressive physique. Sung-an abruptly cut off their pleasantries, announcing there would be no questions and instructing everyone to prepare for the first period. The class was left stunned by his sudden departure, wondering about their new homeroom teacher's strange behavior. His mind was fixated on one question: the reason he had come here in the first place. He later encountered a teacher from a neighboring school, visiting for a student exchange program. In the faculty room, other teachers praised Class 2, calling them a model class and expressing envy that Sung-an got them. One teacher mentioned that 6 of his own students were on sick leave due to the trauma of witnessing the incident. Even as he observed the students on the field, he found himself unable to pinpoint any signs of trouble. He meticulously checked Kim Il-ain's teaching log and class journal, but found no significant traces of bullying. Everything pointed to a clean record, yet his gut told him otherwise. A chilling memory of Il-ain's desperate plea echoed in his mind, fueling his conviction that something was deeply wrong. He continued his solitary investigation, the silence of the school grounds mirroring the quiet unease in his heart. Then, a sudden commotion drew his attention, a scene that would soon shatter the illusion of a perfect class. He saw Baek So-yeon, a student from his class, being harassed by a group of boys demanding money from her. An older man, possibly a school staff member, intervened, telling the boys to go back inside, but Sung-an recognized him. In a painful flashback, he saw Baek So-yeon crying out for his sister, Teacher Il-ain, a desperate plea for help. The memory confirmed his suspicions. His sister had been involved, and these students were at the heart of it. The boys continued the taunt, So-yeon, one of them, Park Dae-jeon, mocking her for having the nerve to ask for her money back. So-yeon flinched, her face contorted in fear as the boys pressed her for the borrowed money. She pleaded with them, begging for more time, promising to pay back at least half of the 500,000 won she owed. Park Dae-jeon, however, simply smiled, enjoying her distress, clearly having no intention of making things easy for her. So-yeon's face showed her desperation, the weight of the debt crushing her. He offered a cruel bargain. If she truly needed the money, she should hang out with them later, implying a far darker repayment. His friends laughed, making crude jokes about Dae-yeon's type, completely devoid of empathy. Earlier, So-yeon's mother had been distraught, telling her daughter that 2 months had passed without payment on their shop's rent. The money had mysteriously disappeared, leaving So-yeon in a dire situation. She had tried to borrow from friends, but no one had that kind of money. Her mother's shop was their only source of income, and So-yeon felt the crushing burden of her family's struggle. In a moment of sheer panic, she had taken money from the shop, a desperate act that now haunted her. Her mother had bowed in apology to the landlord, unaware of her daughter's secret. Then, a message from Park Dae-jeon popped up, saying he had 500,000 won ready for her if she came. Hope mixed with dread. So-yeon arrived at the designated karaoke room. Dae-jeon greeted her with a smirk, feigning friendliness, confirming she had indeed come. His friends watched from inside, laughing amongst themselves, ready for the cruel show they had planned. So-yeon immediately cut to the chase, reminding him he had promised to pay her back. Dae-jeon pulled her closer, his smile turning predatory, implying she knew what she had to do to get her money. Her eyes widened in horror as the true nature of his offer became terrifyingly clear. Tears welled in her eyes as she struggled against his grip, begging him to release her. He tightened his hold, enjoying her fear, refusing to let her go. His friends cheered, preparing a water bottle for a game they called Water Boom, intending to humiliate her. So-yeon screamed, her pleas ignored as they prepared to douse her with water. Trapped and terrified, she could only remember her former teacher, Il-ain, the one person who had understood her pain. Just as despair threatened to consume her, a new presence entered the room. Kim Sung-an stood in the doorway, his silhouette a dark, imposing figure against the vibrant lights of the karaoke room. He saw Dae-jeon's predatory grip on So-yeon, and a cold fury settled in his eyes. The boys, startled by the intruder, demanded to know who he was, oblivious to the storm they had just provoked. Sung-an's voice was low and steady as he commanded them to release the girl, his presence radiating an undeniable authority. Dae-jeon scoffed, mocking Sung-an, asking if he was So-yeon's uncle or boyfriend, completely underestimating him. With a sudden, brutal strike, Sang-an launched himself forward, his fist connecting squarely with Dae-jeon's face. So, Yeon watched in stunned silence as Dae-jeon reeled from the unexpected blow, blood spurting from his nose. He then turned his cold gaze to Dae-jeon, reminding him of the 500,000 won he owed So-yeon. The other boys recoiled in fear, realizing their mistake, as Sang-an declared the debt would now accrue a monstrous 30% weekly interest. Dae-jeon sputtered, protesting the unfair calculation, but Sang-an's eyes promised no mercy. The loan shark had become a teacher, and he was about to teach these students a lesson they would never forget. Part Dae-jeon, a student caught in a web of debt, found himself consumed by dread, his thoughts a frantic scramble. His partner, however, grew restless, questioning their leader's silent pursuit of high school punks as they followed from behind. But the leader offered no answers, his back a wall of indifference, his intentions for the night unclear to his subordinates. His partner, frustrated by the silence, snapped at him for questioning their leader's methods, reminding him of their place. The leader's gaze was sharp, leaving no room for further questions or doubts about their current, unusual mission. Inside the karaoke room, the scene was chaos, with students sprawled on the floor, clearly beaten and in pain. Then, a man in a sharp suit stood tall, introducing himself as Kim Sang-an, a homeroom teacher for Seoulbit High's Grade 3, Class 2. The students were stunned to learn their attacker was a teacher from their own school, their shock quickly turning to outrage. He moved with brutal efficiency, each strike sending another student reeling, demonstrating a frightening level of skill. One student took a direct punch, his face contorting in pain as he collapsed, the force of the blow undeniable. The impact was visceral, a stark reminder of the teacher's power and the seriousness of their current predicament. Kim Sang-an looked down at the injured students, his expression unmoved by their suffering, his resolve unshaken. He pressed his foot on one, delivering a chilling ultimatum to pay back their debt by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or face dire consequences. A young girl, Baek So-yeon, watched in shock, confirming her name when the teacher asked, her voice trembling. He told her simply that it was best for her to leave this place and avoid any further involvement with the situation. She looked at him, a mixture of fear and confusion in her eyes, trying to understand the man who had just intervened. As they walked out, she still seemed lost, trying to understand the events that had just unfolded before her. He walked on, his back a wall of indifference to her unspoken questions, his focus already elsewhere. She wondered if he was somehow related to teacher Wanen, a thought that brought a new layer of worry to her mind. He simply stated that he would not forget this debt, a grim promise hanging heavy in the air between them. His words struck her, making her realize the full weight of the situation and the danger they were all in. She asked if he was there because of teacher Ayan, her voice laced with concern for the other teacher's fate. She warned him, knowing the kind of people they had just dealt with and their propensity for seeking revenge. The student he had beaten earlier vowed revenge, fueled by pain and humiliation, promising to not let this go. He just walked away, leaving the student to his empty threats, seemingly unconcerned by the warning. Back at school, students casually discussed the teacher's violent actions, some even impressed by his insane moves. Baek So-yeon sat silently in class, her face serious, observing the unfolding drama with a heavy heart. Park Dae-jeon, one of the students involved, simmered with quiet fury, his mind still reeling from the events. He was still reeling from the encounter, his mind racing for solutions to the impossible debt he now owed. She watched Dae-jeon, a bead of sweat tracing her temple, knowing the pressure he was under. He then showed her his phone, a message confirming a substantial withdrawal that had just been made. He confirmed the debts, explaining that the 4 million won sum was split into 3 equal parts. She was utterly shocked, unable to grasp what was happening, the sudden payment a complete surprise. One of the other students grabbed Dae-jeon, calling him a dumbass for paying back the debt so easily. He yelled, asking if Dae-jeon paid just because of one punch, clearly furious at his perceived weakness. Dae-jeon, however, was angry, asserting that wasn't the real reason he had decided to pay. Other students were also looking at their phones, faces filled with alarm as new notifications appeared. Their phones vibrated, and they reacted with confused huzzs, unsure of the sudden influx of messages. His eyes went wide, fear dawning on his face as he realized the terrifying implications of the messages. He stared at his phone, utterly terrified by what he saw, his personal information laid bare. He pulled at his shirt collar, sweat beading on his forehead, the feeling of vulnerability overwhelming him. The screen revealed personal data, including family addresses, phone numbers, and even social media passwords. He realized how much power the teacher held over them with that information, a true digital puppet master. He was panicking, understanding the gravity of his situation, his desperate scramble for solutions now clear. He held his head, imagining his father's furious reaction if he found out about his shady dealings. He screamed at his friends, calling them traitors for abandoning him and leaving him to face the teacher alone. One student tried to leave, pulling away from the confrontation, unwilling to get further involved. The teacher's presence loomed, a silent reminder of the impending deadline and the consequences of failure. Kim Sang-an stood over Daejeon in class, a book in hand, watching his every move with an unnerving calm. Daejeon swallowed hard, the pressure mounting as time ran out, his chances of escape dwindling rapidly. He imagined the teacher's fist, a brutal premonition of what awaited him if he failed to meet the deadline. He looked up, utterly terrified of the teacher's true nature, realizing the man was far more dangerous than he seemed. Yejun, with a sly smile, approached Daejeon, sensing an opportunity in his desperation. He mocked Daejeon's friends for begging for money, hinting at a secret that could change everything. Yejun then offered Daejeon a way to avoid paying the debt, a tempting proposition for the desperate student. Daejeon looked surprised, desperate for any solution that would spare him the teacher's wrath. The school building stood, a silent witness to the hidden dramas within its walls as the day drew to a close. Baek Soyeon was there at the school gate, thanking him sincerely for his intervention earlier. She explained that his actions had helped her mom with rent, expressing her deep gratitude for his unexpected help. She bowed deeply, her gratitude evident in her posture, a silent testament to the impact he had made. He remained impassive, stating he was merely collecting a debt, dismissing her thanks with a cold demeanor. Park Daejeon then approached, looking defiant, a smirk playing on his lips, believing he held an advantage. He wore a smirk, clearly believing he held an advantage, ready to play his hand against the teacher. He scoffed at the idea of paying money, ready to make a deal instead. His confidence a thin veneer over fear. Yejun, hidden, subtly encouraged Daejeon, his finger pressed to his lips, a silent signal. Kim Sang-an glanced at his watch. The deadline now passed, his patience clearly at an end. He then began to walk towards Daejeon, a silent threat in his measured steps, closing the distance between them. Daejeon, panicking, offered to reveal why Kim III died, hoping to trade information for his freedom. Then, without another word, Kim Sang-an grabbed Daejeon by the throat, his grip unforgiving. Daejeon choked, his desperate words dying in his constricted throat as true terror set in. The teacher's cold, unyielding gaze promised a hell far worse than any debt, a chilling end to his defiance. Young-sung and watched helpless as debt consumed the lives of others, leaving nothing but despair. The man begged for his life, his plea swallowed by the cold water as Sang-an could only stare. A shadowy figure, the debt collector, watched the scene unfold with chilling detachment. This was the face of absolute terror, a vision that would haunt his memory forever. Our young observer could only clench his fists, the horror burning behind his eyes. Then, the scene shifted to a new victim, Park Dae-gyeon, caught in the same brutal cycle of debt. A young girl, Kim E-ain, watched in silent horror as her teacher was brutally assaulted. Her eyes, wide with fear, reflected the sheer terror of the moment, a silent scream frozen on her face. Park Dae-gyeon, our protagonist, was on his knees, gasping for air, pleading for mercy. His face contorted in agony. He wondered if his parents would be shaken down for money too. Suddenly, he was grabbed from behind, a rag pressed to his face, and the world went dark. His vision blurred, the colors swirling into a distorted mess as consciousness slipped away. He woke up with a start, gasping for air, the lingering effects of the gas still heavy in his lungs. A burly fisherman stood over him, holding a bucket, asking how long he planned to sleep. The man's weathered face held no sympathy, only a stern expectation for him to get to work. Our boy looked around, disoriented, wondering where he was and who these people were. His confusion was palpable, a silent question hanging in the salty air. He tried to explain, saying it was a mistake, that he was just a student. The debt collector, however, quickly shut him down, grabbing his face with a chilling grip. He was given a harsh choice: work his debt off diligently or face the consequences. With a knife at his throat, our protagonist had no real choice but to accept his grim reality. He understood he would be beaten to a pulp if he resisted, so he began to work. For a pampered student, the work was grueling, and he struggled with the tangled fishing nets. His seniors were quick to punish his incompetence, kicking him for tearing the nets. Seasickness and exhaustion became his constant companions, and he often vomited over the side. Back in the city, people stared at him, haggard and worn, wondering if he was a zombie. 10 days later he was back, exhausted but relieved, believing his ordeal was finally over. However, the debt collector stood before him, his face as cold and unyielding as ever. Our boy proudly declared he had worked his ass off and paid his debt, starving on that boat. The debt collector calmly explained the deductions, trainee wages, labor brokerage fees. He broke down the numbers, revealing how little our protagonist actually earned. Park Dae-jeon was furious, shouting that this was illegal and a human rights violation. The man in glasses simply dismissed his anger, saying he even found him a job. The crushing realization hit him. He still owed a substantial amount, and another trip awaited. Elsewhere, a team leader received an interim report on an ongoing investigation. They were investigating students from Solbit High, specifically Class 3-2. So far, the students investigated were all ordinary, even model students, with nothing unusual. The next student on the list was Aeom Ye-jun, his details neatly noted on the file. The debt collector, still with business to attend to, received a message on his phone. Our protagonist stood in a room filled with lockers, a determined look on his face. He swore revenge, declaring that the debt collector would be dead today. He approached another student, the mastermind, who appeared calm and collected. This student had a chilling intensity in his eyes, hinting at a darker nature. Park Dae-jeon reminded him of a previous incident where he helped get rid of a teacher. The student smiled, agreeing to help properly this time, as things might get annoying otherwise. Park Dae-ong lured the debt collector to the prepared location, a room with lockers. Our boy defiantly told the debt collector he hadn't brought the money. The debt collector remained unfazed, noting our protagonist's unexpected brazenness. The debt collector looked around, realizing he was surrounded, but showed no fear. Park Dae-jeon called out his guys, revealing the trap, a gang armed with bats. He was completely surrounded, the air thick with tension, but still he stood tall. His expression remained calm, almost bored, despite the overwhelming odds. Park Dae-jeon demanded his debt be cleared and that the debt collector leave the school. The debt collector, ignoring the threats, simply asked who had planned this ambush. Infuriated by his calm, a gang member swung a bat at the debt collector. In a flash, the debt collector moved, effortlessly deflecting the attack with a practiced ease. He moved with brutal efficiency, incapacitating the attacker in a swift, decisive strike. Park Dae-jeon watched, stunned, realizing he had severely underestimated this man. The debt collector, now splattered with blood, held the defeated gang member, his gaze piercing. He repeated his question, his eyes burning with an unspoken threat. Who was it? Kim Sang-an, a man with a troubled past, found himself entangled in a brutal world of debt and violence. Our guy, Kim Sang-an, held a man by the head, demanding to know who was truly behind the recent chaos. A single man lay defeated, his body twisted into a broken vending machine, a testament to Sang-an's raw power. Blood splattered across his glasses, but his gaze remained sharp and unwavering, reflecting the grim resolve in his heart. The remaining thugs watched, their bravado quickly fading as they realized the terrifying strength of their opponent. He stood there, a silent force, his bloodied face betraying nothing but a steely determination to uncover the truth. Despite their numbers, the thugs charged in, convinced they could overpower the man who had just taken down their comrade. With surprising agility, he turned a teddy bear claw machine into a makeshift weapon, deflecting and striking with brutal efficiency. The metal claw slammed into one of the men, a sickening crunch echoing through the arcade as he fell. Park Dae-jeon, the instigator of this whole mess, stood over a fallen thug, a nervous sweat beading on his forehead. Kim Sang-an calmly wiped the blood from his hands, his eyes fixed on Park Dae-jeon, who now looked truly terrified. Dae-jeon's reflection in the glass of the claw machine showed a man utterly gripped by fear, his plans crumbling around him. With a swift kick, Sang-an sent Dae-jeon sprawling, the smaller man collapsing onto the floor in a heap. Dae-jeon struggled to push himself off the cold, hard floor, his body aching and his mind racing with panic. All around him, the other thugs lay motionless, stark reminders of the fate that awaited him if he couldn't escape. Desperate, Dae-jeon scrambled to his feet and fled, bolting through the arcade in a frantic attempt to get away. Sang-an watched him go, a quiet understanding dawning that running was a temporary solution in their world. Dae-jeon, still reeling from the beating, called his contact, frantically begging for help and a way out of his predicament. On the other end, Ye-jun, a cold and calculating loan shark, listened to the desperate plea with a chilling smile. He glanced at the two burly men waiting nearby, ready to assist anyone who found themselves in deep trouble. Dae-jeon was quickly cornered by Ye-jun's enforcers, his brief moment of freedom now replaced by a new, more sinister threat. Ye-jun delivered the crushing news. A 45% weekly interest rate compounded for the help he'd just provided. His smile was predatory, a clear sign that Daegyeon had just dug himself into an even deeper, more inescapable hole. From his high-rise office, Yi-jun gazed out at the twinkling city lights, a silent predator surveying his urban hunting ground. His own reflection stared back at him from the glass, a stark reminder of the ruthless path he had chosen. The team leader of the debt collection agency arrived on the scene, utterly shocked by the sheer number of his men lying defeated. He surveyed the wreckage, unable to believe that a single individual could have taken down so many of his trained fighters. His face hardened with a mix of disbelief and simmering anger, realizing the severity of this unexpected defeat. He turned, his mind still struggling to comprehend how a simple side job had turned into such a humiliating disaster. With his back to the broken arcade, he listened to the trembling confession of how they had all been utterly routed. The defeated man stammered out the payment received for the job, a measly 5 million won, an insult for such a task. Enraged by the paltry sum and the colossal failure, the team leader lashed out, striking the messenger with brutal force. The man crumbled to the ground from the unexpected blow, his face already bruised and now further damaged. The team leader stood over him, a claw hammer gripped tightly in his hand, a chilling symbol of his merciless nature. He demanded the name of the man who had caused such a mess, his voice low and dangerous, promising retribution. The defeated thug, barely able to speak, whispered the name Kim Sung-an, a name that would soon carry heavy weight. A slow, cruel smile spread across the team leader's face. The name clearly resonated with him, sparking a dangerous interest. Back at the office, Kim Sang-an diligently worked, unaware of the new formidable enemy he had just made. A younger man, his junior, observed him with admiration, diligently working on paperwork, eager to contribute more. Sung-an adjusted his tie, a quiet weariness etched into his features, reflecting the burdens he carried alone. The junior looked up, his eyes shining with respect, calling Sung-an his role model, the best loan shark in the country. Sung-an looked away, a flicker of pain crossing his face at the praise, for he saw himself as anything but a hero. He removed his shirt, revealing a body covered in old scars, each mark a harsh reminder of the violent life he had endured. He asked if the junior truly wanted to become like him, a man whose life was defined by the dirty work of debt collection. His eyes held a deep sadness, knowing the true cost of their profession, the moral compromises it demanded. The junior, however, understood more than Sung-an realized, knowing the personal sacrifice he had made for his family. He knelt, begging Sung-an to allow him to continue, desperate to earn enough to pay for his sister's urgent surgery. Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded, his raw vulnerability mirroring Sung-an's own past struggles and motivations. Seeing his own reflection in the young man's desperation, Sung-an agreed, offering him a chance and a 10% incentive. He zipped up his suit, telling the junior that once his sister's medical bills were paid, he must leave this dangerous line of work. Later that night, Sung-an walked through the quiet streets, his mind heavy with thoughts of the unfolding events. His gaze was sharp, focused on the deeper mysteries surrounding the person who had hired the thugs. He knew the true mastermind wasn't driven by money, but by a more complex, hidden agenda. The pieces began to connect, leading him back to the tragic suicide of teacher Kim Won-an, a case that still haunted him. A sudden realization struck him. Someone wanted him to stop digging into the truth of I-An's death. He adjusted his tie, a small gesture of resolve, understanding that the closer he got, the more his enemies would reveal themselves. Meanwhile, the junior, oblivious to the escalating danger, joyfully prepared for his first collection run, feeling a surge of newfound purpose. He even donned a pair of glasses, mimicking Sung-an's stoic demeanor, determined to emulate his respected leader. As he turned to leave, he noticed a figure standing silently in the doorway, a sudden chill running down his spine. Thinking it was Sung-an, he offered to retrieve the forgotten tie, completely unaware of the true identity of the visitor. But as he looked closer, a wave of profound shock washed over him, recognizing the man was not Sung-an at all. The team leader of Good Capital, Choi Oh-cheol, stood there, his presence radiating an undeniable aura of menace. The junior was already bleeding, slumped on a chair, clearly having been caught and brutally assaulted. Sung-an rushed to his side, his heart pounding as he frantically checked for a pulse, a desperate hope clinging to him. Just as he confirmed the faint pulse, the team leader raised his claw hammer high, aiming a deadly blow at Sung-an. The floor was splattered with blood, a grim canvas reflecting the brutal reality of the situation. Sung-an looked up, his eyes narrowing in recognition, realizing he knew this man, Choi Oh-cheol, the team leader. With a swift, powerful kick, Sung-an knocked the team leader back, preventing the fatal strike. Choi Oh-cheol recovered, a chilling smile on his face, asking Sung-an what kind of problem he thought this was. Sung-an's gaze was cold, understanding that this was no longer a simple debt collection, but a direct confrontation. A flashback showed Sung-an accepting a contract position from an older man, a path he hoped would lead to stability. The old man had warned him then to keep his personal battles separate, never to involve the company in his troubles. Now, Sung-an fully grasped the weight of that warning, knowing he had to handle this escalating conflict entirely on his own. Choi Oh-cheo cracked his knuckles, a dangerous gleam in his eyes, eager for the fight that was about to begin. Sung-an met his gaze, a quiet readiness settling over him. It had been a long time since he had faced such a challenge. Choi Oh-cheo raised his hammer again, his smile widening into a terrifying grin, relishing the prospect of their impending clash. As he prepared to strike, a single word escaped his lips, a name that carried a hidden history, a forgotten past. Maknae? Kim Sung-an, a man forged in the brutal world of debt collection, was bound by blood to a life he both mastered and loathed. He had been subjected to relentless, unforgiving training, told he must become a truly terrifying presence to survive. His mentor, a man who epitomized cruelty, believed that fear was the only currency that mattered in their line of work. Debtors, he learned, would only ever pay up once they were convinced that death was the only alternative. Kim Sang and himself had once been the perfect example, a victim of circumstance forced into their world. He was paying off his father's debt, his mentor said, because he simply did not want to be beaten to a pulp. Yet, a flicker of understanding crossed the mentor's face, realizing there was something else at play for his protege. Kim Sang-an's fear was not for himself but for his sister, a deep personal terror that drove him. Even in his battered state, Kim Sang-an's jaw remained stubbornly clenched, a silent act of defiance. His mentor, ever the provocateur, challenged him, asking if he found the brutal training disagreeable. He had always complained about being saddled with Kim Sang-an, seeing him as a burden. The mentor had seen him as a hopeless case, a brat unworthy of his attention and methods. He had once promised to start by breaking a rib, a chilling reminder of the violence he inflicted. The relentless march of time had brought them to this very moment, a clash of past and present. Years later, the mentor, now scarred but still menacing, faced Kim Sang-an, noting how quickly time had passed. He mocked Kim Sang-an's rise to team leader, calling him a piece of trash who had somehow climbed the ranks. A shared glance, a silent challenge passing between them, the stage set for an inevitable confrontation. The mentor then invited Kim Sang-an to prove how much he had truly grown since their last encounter. With a sudden, violent lunge, the mentor swung his hammer, initiating the brutal dance he knew so well. Kim Sang-an moved with incredible speed, a blur of motion as he swiftly evaded the deadly blow. The mentor was genuinely surprised, acknowledging Kim Sang-an had become much quicker than he remembered. He remarked that in the old days, such a strike would have certainly cracked Kim Sang-an's skull. The mentor's men then joined the fray, launching a coordinated attack against Kim Sang-an. Kim Sang-an, unyielding, parried their attacks with a focused intensity that betrayed no fear. He sensed his former mentor did not truly wish for the situation to spiral out of control. Kim Sang-an, seizing the moment, offered a surprising solution to their standoff. The solution was simple, he stated. His former mentor needed to bow his head and offer an apology. The audacity of the demand ignited a furious, shocked response from the mentor, Kim Sang, and immediately followed up, delivering a swift, powerful kick that caught the mentor off guard. The mentor was sent sprawling backward, blood gushing from his nose, stunned by the unexpected force. Still defiant, the mentor declared his absolute refusal to offer any apology. He cursed Kim Sang-an, calling him a bastard for his insolence and refusal to submit. The mentor seethed, recalling how Kim Sang-an had always, stubbornly, refused his commands. That defiance had always fueled a deep, burning hatred within the mentor's heart. Kim Sang-an had followed orders from others, but never, the mentor remembered, his own. He swore to teach Kim Sang-an a lesson, a proper, brutal lesson he would never forget. The mentor lunged once more, his bloody hammer poised for a devastating strike. Kim Sang-an met the attack head-on, blocking the hammer with his forearm, absorbing the impact. In a fluid motion, he quickly retaliated, driving a sharp punch into the mentor's face. The punch landed with a sickening thud, sending blood splattering as the mentor staggered. Kim Sang-an continued his relentless assault, a flurry of precise blows raining down. He applied the very lesson his mentor had taught him, closed the distance against a blunt weapon. With a powerful, decisive strike, Kim Sang-an and landed another blow, showcasing his terrifying mastery. The mentor finally fell, his hammer clattering to the ground, his body broken and defeated. Kim sang and picked up the hammer, a symbolic act of taking control, his presence now utterly menacing. From the ground, the mentor observed Kim Sang-un, noting the same unlikable, defiant look in his eyes. The mentor, desperate, launched another unarmed attack, which Kim Sang and effortlessly blocked. The mentor, looking for answers, asked if Kim Sang and truly harbored such hatred for him. Kim Sang-an's reply was cold and unwavering. The feeling was entirely mutual. A sudden realization dawned on the mentor, Kim Sang-an had intentionally allowed himself to be hit. Kim Sang-an had moved exactly as his mentor had taught him. A perfect, calculated execution. This was a cunning ploy, making the mentor mistakenly believe he could predict Kim Sang-an's every move. The mentor, defeated, grudgingly admitted that Kim Sang-an had truly surpassed his teachings. Kim Sang-an calmly explained his past refusals were for orders he simply could not accept. He recalled orders like kidnapping a woman's child, a heinous act he would never commit. The mentor lay bleeding and broken, a testament to the consequences of his own cruel methods. He remembered other orders, like burning down a shop to force a late payment, acts of pure malice. Kim Sang-an stood over the defeated mentor, who looked up with a mix of confusion and disbelief. He recalled the mentor taking sick pleasure in the despair of others, a trait Kim Sang-an abhorred. The mentor, his pride wounded, demanded to know why the punk he had trained was now looking down on him. He lashed out, calling Kim Sang-an a bastard, questioning if he saw himself as some noble loan shark. He insisted they were both the same, two pieces of trash, bound by the same dirty business. Kim Sang-an, with a somber resolve, agreed he was trash, but clarified he found no joy in such work. Later, Kim Sang-an found himself in a hospital, now focused on a new, unsettling mystery. He had learned of a student named Ye Jun, a person of interest whose very existence was shrouded in secrecy. Kim Sang-an, a loan shark, stood before his deceased sister's memorial, a place filled with hushed sorrow and quiet reflection. His reflection in the glass showed a man burdened by grief, yet hardened by a grim determination, a resolve to settle old scores. A young woman, Hong A-rum, sat nearby, head bowed, her presence adding to the somber atmosphere of the memorial park. Sang-an approached her, his voice measured as he inquired about a debt owed to his sister, a name that still lingered in the air. She looked up, startled, her eyes revealing a deep sadness as she confirmed the debt remained unpaid, a lingering injustice. His gaze sharpened, seeing in her a reflection of the unspoken struggles and burdens his sister had carried in her life. He explained his ruthless philosophy. Interest was not just profit, but fair compensation for the risks and emotional toll of lending. The girl's eyes widened, a flicker of fear mixed with a dawning understanding as she grasped the cold, logical precision of his words. Sang-an then made his intentions clear, promising to ensure the debt was collected soon, a vow that carried a chilling weight. His words were a promise of relentless pursuit, a silent threat against those who had wronged his sister, leaving no room for doubt. He needed to understand the full scope of his sister's suffering, starting with those who were closest to her and her burdens. His eyes narrowed, a predator's focus, as he began to formulate his intricate plan for retribution, a path of no return. Later, Sang-an found himself in a sterile counseling room at school, a place typically reserved for difficult, private conversations. He sat opposite Ye-jun, the class president, a young man who projected an unsettling air of composure and control. Sang-an's questions were direct, probing Ye-jun about his presence at the scene of Ayan's death, seeking any hidden truths. A subtle tension filled the air, a silent battle of wills between the two, each carefully measuring the other's responses. Ye-jun maintained a facade of normalcy, claiming the traumatic event hadn't deeply affected him, a claim Sang-an found suspect. But the vivid memory of the gruesome scene, a flash of red like splattered blood, underscored the grim reality of the incident. Sang-an knew better. Every other witness to that tragedy was receiving psychiatric help, struggling with the trauma. He looked at Ye-jun, his gaze sharp and unwavering, sensing a deeper truth beneath the boy's calm, collected demeanor. Ye-jun's smile seemed forced, a desperate, almost pathetic attempt to appear unaffected by the profound tragedy. He tried to rationalize his composure, suggesting it was for the sake of class morale, a flimsy excuse in Sang-an's eyes. Sang-an's expression darkened, his suspicions growing with every evasive answer, confirming his initial unease. He didn't mince words, stating his belief that the ultimate cause of Ayan's death lay within their very own class. He then revealed his chilling thought. He suspected Ye-jun, the class president himself, of being involved. Ye-jun's composure finally cracked, a desperate plea for Sang-an to find the real culprit, feigning innocence. He insisted that even if Sang-an suspected him, he wanted justice for his dead teacher, a performance for the ages. Sang-an watched him leave the counseling room, a subtle shift in their dynamic now established, a new game begun. He acknowledged their future interactions, a silent promise of deeper scrutiny and a relentless pursuit of truth to come. Ye-jun walked away, leaving Sang-an alone with his thoughts in the quiet school hallway, the silence heavy with unspoken words. Sang-an was left to ponder, the image of his dead sister a haunting presence in his mind, fueling his resolve. He remembered the gruesome scene, the shock and despair that had gripped him that day, a moment frozen in time. The memory was a vivid, painful tableau, replaying in his mind with unsettling clarity, each detail sharp. He had watched from a distance as his sister's life ended, an event that had irrevocably altered his own path. The chaos that ensued was a blur of fear and panic, a scene of utter devastation and widespread distress. He recalled the raw emotion, the terror in people's eyes as the tragedy unfolded, a collective gasp of horror. Yet, amidst the horror, a strange, dark fascination had stirred within him, a chilling enjoyment of the spectacle. Sang-an walked through the school, his mind replaying the past, a shadow lingering in his wake, unseen by others. He remembered the desperate grip of a student's hand, a plea for help that echoed in his memory, a silent cry. He saw the raw despair in her eyes, a reflection of the pain his sister must have felt, a shared burden. He realized then that his true nature was far more complex, a mask he was ready to shed, revealing his core. His sister had called her tormentors, terrible demons, words that now resonated deeply with him, a call to arms. He vowed to find every single one of them without mercy and make them pay for their actions, no exceptions. His footsteps echoed, a steady, relentless march towards an inevitable reckoning, a path he had chosen. Later, Sang-an was watching a live stream at home, his focus intense, captivated by the digital performance. His subordinate, Matnai, was hospitalized, so he was covering for him, observing the broadcast with keen interest. Another subordinate, a young man in a blue tracksuit, joined him, commenting on the streamer's unusual popularity. The blue tracksuit guy explained the harsh reality of cam girls and their desperate need for donations, a cutthroat world. Sang and listened, his expression unreadable as he absorbed the details of this new transactional world. On screen, a streamer named Ian danced, captivating her audience with energetic moves and a practiced smile. The blue tracksuit guy urged Sang-an to learn from the streamer's ability to attract donations, a skill to be admired. Ian reacted with exaggerated gratitude as donations poured in, fueling her performance and boosting her energy. The screen was a flurry of hearts and messages, a digital spectacle of manufactured intimacy and fleeting attention. Sang-an watched, his eyes reflecting the glow of the screen, a new, cunning plan forming in his strategic mind. He saw the ranking table, understanding the brutal hierarchy of the streaming world, a familiar power dynamic. The blue tracksuit guy explained how rankings determined a streamer's income and status, a cruel game of popularity. He emphasized the viciousness of the system, where lower-ranked streamers were barely treated as human, discarded easily. Sang and realized this world, like his own, was built on transactional power, a cold exchange of value. He wondered if a substantial donation would compel the streamer to answer his questions, revealing deeper truths. The blue tracksuit guy confirmed it, but then looked at Sang-an with a hint of concern, sensing a deeper motive. He was shocked by the amount Sang-an was preparing to donate, sensing a significant, perhaps dangerous, intent. Sang-an began typing, his fingers moving with a deliberate, decisive rhythm, each keystroke a calculated move. His eyes, gleaming with an unnerving intensity, were fixed on the screen, a silent promise of what was to come. The streamer, Ian, looked at the sudden surge of donations with a surprised, yet eager, smile. She agreed to answer a question for such a generous donation, eager to please her new, powerful patron. Sang-an continued to type, his actions precise, his intent unwavering, a hunter closing in on his prey. The streamer, sensing more donations, played coy, promising an answer if he donated again, pushing her luck. A male voice, likely a fellow streamer or moderator, urged her to answer quickly, calling him the boss, recognizing his power. Ian conceded, ready to reveal her secret to her generous benefactor, a performance well rehearsed. She smiled, a hint of cunning in her eyes as she prepared to disclose the meaning of her name, a calculated reveal. Sang-un watched her, his expression unmoving, as she delivered her practiced performance, a master of deception. She claimed Ian was merely the name of a doll she used to play with, now broken, A sad, yet convenient story. A sudden, ominous beat, a chilling realization settled over the room. The truth now laid bare. The other streamers reacted, performing for the camera, urging IN to continue her show, oblivious to the true gravity. But Sung-an saw past the act, recognizing the cold calculation behind her words, the manipulative core of her being. He understood then, with absolute clarity, her true manipulative nature. A facade finally crumbling before him. Her charming smile, a tool of her trade, now seemed like a grotesque mockery to him, a cruel twist of fate. Since she had borrowed his sister's name and profited from it, Sung-an decided she would now pay the ultimate price. Lee Hui-yeon found herself trapped in a web of debt and despair, forced into a life she never imagined. Just 1 month prior, her life seemed ordinary, a typical high school student admiring the new bag her classmate carried. The bag itself was a luxurious item, clearly expensive and new, catching Hui-yeon's eye immediately. She wondered how her classmate, Hong A-ryum, could afford such a lavish accessory. A-ryum, noticing Hui-yeon's gaze, boasted that it cost at least 2 million won and was a new arrival. Hui-yeon, intrigued and a little desperate, asked if A-ryum's parents had bought it for her. A-ryum, with a sly smile, claimed she had bought it herself with money from a part-time job. Hui-yeon was surprised and asked what kind of job it was, hoping to find a similar opportunity. A-ryum initially downplayed the job, saying it was nothing special but paid pretty well. Hui-yeon, eager for money, pressed further, explaining she could handle tough work, even a BBQ restaurant. A-ryum, after a moment, agreed to introduce her to the job, and Hui-yeon felt a surge of hope. However, she soon realized that asking Hong A-ryum for help was a grave mistake. The job was a live stream, initially seeming harmless, like a social media or YouTube broadcast. A-ryum assured her it was easy, requiring only that she play along with the chat. But first, A-ryum insisted they dress Hui-yeon up, which made her feel uneasy. Hui-yeon thought the outfit was too much, but A-ryum dismissed her concerns, calling her a prude. The makeup and clothing A-ryum chose were indeed over the top, and Hui-yeon soon understood why. The broadcast was called a ranking broadcast, and its content was shockingly simple. Streamers performed reactions corresponding to viewer sponsorships, with bigger donations leading to crazier acts. Hui-yeon couldn't help but stand there awkwardly, struggling to participate in the excessive reactions. The real problem was the ranking system, which ordered streamers by the donations they received. Payouts and standing within the broadcast depended entirely on these rankings, creating intense pressure. As the stream progressed, the streamers engaged in increasingly excessive reactions, driven by the desire for higher rank. Hui-yeon absolutely couldn't fit in among them, feeling completely out of place and ashamed. After the broadcast, the boss was furious with Hui-yeon's performance, claiming she had put the show in the red. A-ryum interceded, reminding the boss that it was Hui-yeon's first time, and he reluctantly agreed to pay her. Hui-yeon apologized profusely, feeling the weight of her inadequacy. The boss warned her that there would be no mercy if she performed poorly again. A-ryum, celebrating the payment, thanked the boss, seemingly unbothered by the situation. Hui-yeon, expecting a meager sum, was shocked to see 1 million won deposited into her account. The allure of easy money made her decide to try the broadcast just one more time. Without truly understanding what kind of money it was, she was drawn deeper into the system. A-ryum continued to encourage her, saying that better reactions would lead to even more money. And so, Hui-yeon found herself back on the broadcast, apologizing for her previous performance and promising to do better. The money she earned so easily was also spent with alarming ease, buying accessories and designer bags. One day, a viewer asked A-ryum about her nickname, IN. A-ryum casually revealed that IN was the name of a doll she used to play with, a doll she had a lot of fun with. Hui-yeon's heart sank. She suddenly realized the chilling truth. Hong A-ryum's nickname being the same as the homeroom teacher's wasn't a coincidence. She understood then that she was destined to become A-ryum's next doll. A wave of fear washed over her, and she desperately wanted to escape. But A-ryum confronted her, demanding to know where she thought she was going. A-ryum then dropped a bombshell. Hui-yeon had accumulated a massive debt. Hui-yeon was stunned, denying any knowledge of such a debt. A-ryum explained that the boss had invested money to raise her up, and he expected to collect it. Hui-yeon protested, saying this was never mentioned before, but A-ryum silenced her with a harsh slap. A-ryum reminded her of what happened to their homeroom teacher when she acted up. She subtly threatened Hui-yeon, implying a similar fate if she didn't comply. A-ryum then told Hui-yeon that she probably didn't like the situation, but there was nothing she could do about it. If Hui-yeon didn't appear on the broadcast, she would have no way to pay back the debt. Hui Yong understood the grim reality of her situation. Arium, with a chilling smile, promised to help her pay it back quickly, but with a sinister twist. And so, Hui Yon was forced to appear on the broadcast once again. The boss announced the day's special content, a private meal date with Hui Yon for the highest donor. Hui Yon didn't understand what a meal date was, but the viewers' reactions were explosive. Donations poured in, creating a frantic bidding war for the private meal date ticket. Hui Yon, bewildered, asked Arium about the nature of a meal date. Arium casually dismissed her concerns, describing it as simply eating and drinking coffee with a fan. Hui Yong was perplexed by the amount of money people spent for such a seemingly innocent encounter. Arium reassured her, telling her not to worry and just to have fun. Pushed by Arium, Hui Yon went on the meal date, trying to adopt a mindset of enjoyment. However, the location of the date immediately filled her with dread. She found herself in a shady area, surrounded by bars and motels, far from any respectable restaurant. Hui Yon, terrified, tried to excuse herself, but the winner of the meal date approached. He was a large, unkempt man who immediately made her uncomfortable. He confirmed he was the winner and, with a lecherous grin, suggested they go in right away. Hui Yon recoiled, asking where he meant, a strange, unpleasant smell filling the air. He revealed he had already booked a room and ordered a pork combo platter, horrifying her. She protested, refusing to go there, but he grew aggressive, shouting about the money he spent. He accused her of scamming him and demanded his money back, threatening her if she couldn't pay. He demanded she come with him to eat if she couldn't produce the money. Hui Yon ran back to Arium, confronting her. Knowing Arium had deliberately misled her, she was disgusted, still feeling the lingering smell of that bastard from the encounter. Arium, however, simply laughed, dismissing Hui Yon's trauma as overreacting after just one date. She brutally reminded Hui Yon that she was in too much debt to refuse, physically assaulting her as a warning. Hui Yon, trapped and terrified, could only watch as her homeroom teacher stepped forward, his presence a chilling beacon of hope and dread. The man in glasses, our protagonist, delivered a brutal punch, sending a spray of blood from his opponent. His powerful blow connected with raw force, leaving the other man reeling from the impact. With the final, devastating strike, he unleashed a surge of dark energy, utterly overpowering his foe. Li Hui Yon, the woman who had brought him here, watched the brutal display with wide, horrified eyes. Her homeroom teacher was a fighter. The protagonist stood over the defeated man, who could only gasp out questions about his fighting prowess. He then turned to Hui Yon, calling her name, his expression unreadable. Our protagonist met her gaze with a stern look, informing her that he had something important he needed to ask. Later, they sat by the water, the city lights reflecting in the dark, still surface, a quiet moment before the storm. His words caught her off guard, a sudden question about the teacher's older brother. Hui Yuan looked away, her face clouded with a mixture of sadness and deep hesitation. He pressed on, sensing her reluctance, asking if she was afraid of Hong A-Room. A flashback showed Hong A-Room, a girl with long pink hair and a chilling smile, who was once a happy playmate. Hui Yuan's pensive expression deepened as she recalled the events that led to this moment. She began to recount how it all started at the beginning of the semester, when a particular incident unfolded. The protagonist listened intently. His eyes narrowed as the story of the incident began to unravel. The new homeroom teacher, Kim A.N., introduced herself with a bright, welcoming smile, eager to connect with her students. Teacher Kim I.N. quickly became a favorite, spending extra time with her students outside of regular class hours. Hong A-Room, already popular, garnered more attention by flaunting her new, expensive bag to her classmates. She held up the designer mini bag, casually mentioning its hefty price tag of 5 million won. Hong A-Room's beauty and wealth made her the center of attention, drawing in many who sought her favor. However, the teacher's request for students to help clean the classroom seemed to bother Hong A-Room, teacher Kim Mae, and explained that cleaning was a shared responsibility, something all friends did together for their shared space. Hong A-Room scoffed, believing she had already fulfilled her duty by paying another student to clean for her. The student she paid, Yongsu, nervously admitted that he received 10,000 won a day for the cleaning. Teacher Kim I.A. confronted Hong A-Room, sternly telling her to pick up the broom herself. She stood firm, explaining that while money could solve many things, values like responsibility could not be bought. Hong A-Room simply smirked, challenging the teacher's principles with a dismissive, "Is that so?" A few days later, Hong A-Room's precious, limited edition mini bag went missing, sparking a frantic search. She demanded that the teachers search every corner of the school to find her expensive item. Her fury was palpable as she insisted they search everywhere, including the gym, cafeteria, and even the teacher's office. The teachers, swayed by Hong A-room's insistence, began searching the entire school. To everyone's shock, the missing luxury bag was found hidden in teacher Kim Won-an's office. Teacher Kim Won-an stood frozen, utterly bewildered, as her colleagues looked at her with suspicion. She stammered, unable to comprehend how the bag ended up in her possession, her face a mask of disbelief. Hong A-room looked at her with a knowing smirk, implying the teacher had stolen it. She accused teacher Kim first, and of hypocrisy, suggesting her talk of values was just a cover for her own desires. Hong A-room smugly added that a teacher's salary likely made such luxury goods unattainable, further fueling the suspicion. The other teachers advised Kim Word-a, and that without CCTV footage, her innocence was difficult to prove. Kim the 1A was distraught, protesting that she was a teacher, dedicated to guiding children. The male teacher warned her that calling the police might not clear her name and could cause more trouble. He stressed the importance of her upcoming permanent contract, implying that any scandal could ruin her career. Outside, Hong A-room confronted Kim 1A, demanding a proper apology. Her face twisted into a terrifying grin, making it clear that she enjoyed the teacher's humiliation. Kim I-ain, cornered and defeated, could only look down in shame. Back in the classroom, students whispered and gossiped, shocked by the teacher's apparent theft. Kim I-a and publicly apologized to Hong A-room in front of the entire class, her voice filled with despair. Tears welled in her eyes as her pride shattered into a million pieces. Students openly mocked her, spreading rumors about the thief teacher and making light of her misfortune. Hui Yong recounted how the students' attitudes towards teacher Kim the first and changed dramatically after that day. She expressed her deep regret, knowing how much Kim I-an's pride must have suffered. Our protagonist looked at Hui Yong, offering a path to redemption if she felt guilty towards Kim I-an. Hui Yong looked at him, surprised by his proposition, unsure how to respond. A memory surfaced, a younger Hui Yan lying on a rooftop, declaring her dream of becoming a teacher. Her younger brother had challenged her, questioning if she truly had what it took to achieve such an honorable goal. Young Hui Yan had confidently asserted that to be a teacher, she had to live honorably, beyond reproach. Hui Yong's gaze returned to the present, remembering Kim the first. At that moment, something far more important than pride had shattered within Kim Won-an. Our protagonist then declared that the collection of evidence and allies would begin now. Meanwhile, Hong A-room, in her live studio, became frustrated when her friend, Hui Yon, was absent. Hong A-room's manipulative smile returned as she mused about Hui Yon, finding her too bland compared to Kim the first day. Hui Yon, seemingly subservient, apologized to Hong A-room, citing family issues as her reason for absence. Hong A-room's face contorted in anger, threatening Hui Yon if she ever ghosted again, then challenged her to take the top spot. Hui Yon, no longer meek, pulled back her hair, a fierce new determination in her eyes, ready to challenge Hong A-room for dominance. Hong A-room, a streamer in last place, found herself brutally fired by her enraged boss. He made it clear that her consistent poor performance was an unacceptable joke to the broadcast. With harsh words and a furious glare, her boss screamed at her to get out immediately, emphasizing that her time on the platform was over. A-room could only offer a meek, apologetic response, her face reflecting deep shame. The room was filled with other streamers and staff, all watching the humiliating scene unfold as A-room sat dejectedly at the table, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Her colleagues showed no sympathy. Among them, two female streamers exchanged glances, one smirking subtly as she declared that they honestly didn't need someone like A-room with them. The other added that even her dog could perform better. A-room sat alone, her head bowed in despair, as the cruel words of her colleagues echoed around her. She wished she would never become so pathetic, while they joked about dying rather than living like her. The boss's voice cut through the air once more, demanding to know why A-room was still there and reiterating his order for her to leave. She flinched, offering a quiet yes, before slowly rising. As A-room walked away, her head still down, the other streamers continued their taunts, remarking on her lack of basic manners and praising the boss for making a smart decision to fire her. One of the streamers, Li Hui-yon, watched A-room go. She offered a seemingly kind, yet unsettling "Ani," calling out to her departing colleague. Then, with a cruel smile, Hui-yon wished A-room a safe trip home before adding a final venomous jab, "You last place bitch." The boss, seemingly pleased with the drama, declared that it was thrilling to witness such a sight. He then quickly moved on, ready to start the next segment of the broadcast with renewed energy. He rallied the remaining girls, telling them to get up and act pretty for their audience, ready to kick off the next segment with a group dance. Lee Hui-yeon, now in the spotlight, smiled sweetly at the camera, welcoming her oppas and asking if they were ready to empty their wallets for her today. The audience reacted with excitement, surprised by Hui-yeon's sudden return to the broadcast and the unexpected perfection of her dance form. She moved with an easy grace, her body swaying perfectly to the rhythm, captivating the viewers with her renewed energy and skill. Hui-yeon smirked confidently, enjoying the attention and the surprised reactions from everyone watching. She seemed to have found a new level of confidence. The boss commented on how Hui-yeon was taking the first heart of the day, as expected, and she offered a grateful "Thank you, Appa" to her generous viewer. Hui-yeon looked directly at the camera, her expression unwavering, asserting that a nobody like A-room could never beat her, no matter how hard she tried. She continued her confident performance, seemingly unfazed by A-room's earlier humiliation, basking in the glow of her newfound attention. Hui-yeon's smile widened, a hint of something predatory in her eyes as she reveled in the moment, enjoying the spotlight. Meanwhile, A-room sat off to the side, watching Hui-yeon's performance with a growing sense of dread. The cheers for her rival were a stark reminder of her own failure. A-room's face contorted in a silent scream, her eyes wide with a mix of anger and despair. The humiliation was becoming unbearable. Suddenly, the screen lit up with a massive donation of 20,000 hearts for Hui-yeon, causing a stir among the audience and the other streamers. The boss's eyes widened in shock, shouting about the enormous donation, barely believing what he was seeing unfold before him. Hui-yeon, now at the top of the rankings, turned to A-reum, asking if she could step aside, as she needed to do her reaction to the donation. A-reum looked up, her face a mask of disbelief and pain, as Hui-yeon confidently stood before her, demanding the space to celebrate. Hui-yeon's expression was calm, almost serene, as she waited for A-reum to comply, fully aware of the power shift that had just occurred. A-reum, defeated, could only utter a quiet, "Yes, of course," acknowledging Hui-yeon's new position and her own fall from grace. Hui-yeon turned her back to A-reum, a triumphant smirk on her face, internally marveling that this ugly bitch had suddenly received such a huge donation. She began her celebratory dance, moving with an air of absolute victory, her movements fluid and captivating. Hui-yeon continued to dance, her gaze confident and her smile radiating pure satisfaction, enjoying every moment of her triumph. A-reum, on the other hand, frantically tapped on her phone, trying to reach out to her own supporters, her desperation growing with each passing second. She sent messages to her fan room, pleading with her oppas not to let her lose first place, begging for even a little bit of support. The notifications on A-reum's phone kept buzzing, a constant reminder of the ongoing struggle, each vibration a pang of anxiety. Her face was a mix of worry and a hint of a calculating smirk as she watched the numbers, realizing she needed to act quickly. More notifications streamed in, showing her fans rallying, expressing their determination to protect their princess's first place at all costs. A-reum's smirk grew wider, a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. She knew her fans were her ATMs, ready to spend for her. She urged them on, silently willing them to move faster and faster, to send in more hearts and push her back to the top. Suddenly, a massive rush of hearts flooded the screen for A-reum, causing the boss to shout in surprise, wondering what was happening. A huge heart donation for A-reum appeared, signaling a fierce comeback in the ongoing battle for the top spot. Hui-yeon, surprised by the sudden surge of donations for A-reum, stared at the screen, her confident expression faltering slightly. More donations poured in, each one a testament to A-reum's fans' dedication, creating a vibrant, heart-filled cascade across the screen. A-reum watched the flood of hearts with renewed hope, her face reflecting a mix of relief and determination. She questioned the sudden turn of events, wondering who was sponsoring Hui-yeon with such massive donations. Meanwhile, in another location, a group of men were excitedly celebrating, one of them shouting about the dopamine rush they were getting from the donation battle. Another man, clearly a leader, asked how much they were allowed to donate, eager to push Hui-yeon even further ahead. He confirmed that it didn't matter how much they spent, as long as Lee Hui-yeon secured the first place position. With a triumphant laugh, he urged them to do another 10,000, determined to crush the competition. The boss, witnessing the unprecedented donation battle, exclaimed that he had never seen anything like it in his 6 years of broadcasting. The screen was a whirlwind of hearts and notifications, a clear sign that an infinite heart rush had ignited an epic reaction battle between the streamers. A-reum's face showed a mix of excitement and anxiety as her heart swelled with the thrill of the ongoing fight. But then, the last heart went to Hui-yeon and A-reum's fan firepower began to fade, leaving her vulnerable. Hoi-young, now back in the lead, looked at Areum with a smirk, asking if she wanted to be a backup dancer and collect pennies. Areum could only glare back. Areum's face twisted in frustration and anger, silently cursing, recognizing the precariousness of her position. She realized with a jolt that at this rate she was truly going to lose first place, a terrifying thought that gripped her. Suddenly, another enormous donation of 30,000 hearts for Hoi-young flashed across the screen, solidifying her lead. The boss announced that with the incredible 30,000 donation, Hoi-young had decisively taken first place. Areum's eyes widened in horror, her entire body shaking as the realization hit her. She was below Hoi-young. She felt a wave of despair wash over her. The thought of being in last place, not even second or third, was unbearable. Hoi-young, ever the taunter, looked at Areum with a smug expression, asking her if she was still in last place. Hoi-young's smile was pure malice, as she questioned why a mere last placer was even standing up. She then mocked Areum, suggesting she squat down like a last placer should, rubbing salt in the wound. Areum's face contorted in a mix of confusion and pure anguish, unable to comprehend how this had happened. She looked around, bewildered, demanding to know just what had happened to cause such a drastic shift in her fortunes. The boss explained that Areum looked like she didn't understand, but this outcome was expected. He revealed that her main sponsor, Banpo God Building owner, made up 80% of her sponsorship share. The boss continued, stating that for some unknown reason, that big spender simply hadn't shown up today. He mused that the viewers were thrilled by the underdog overtaking, and the sponsorships that would have gone to Areum were now going to other performers. The reason was simple. The fall of the first-place streamer provided the greatest entertainment for the audience. For the boss, this meant sweet ratings and a successful broadcast, but for Areum, it was the worst day of her life. Areum clung to a sliver of hope, telling herself it wasn't over yet, that there was still a little time left. She believed that if only Banpo God Building owner made a move, she could at least avoid last place. Frantically, Areum messaged her sponsor, pleading for sponsorships, telling him she was being pushed back by a nobody. She cried out, asking where he was, what he was doing, desperate for his intervention. Her phone kept buzzing with unanswered messages, each one a stark reminder of her sponsor's silence. Areum continued to send desperate messages, her plea for sponsorships growing more urgent with each tap. Shin Jung-woo pursued a man whose online persona was Banpo God Building owner, but his real identity was Kang Jang-dae. This Kang Jang-dae held the majority of sponsorship shares for a streamer named Hong Areum, and was the CEO of an entertainment company. Shin Jung-woo, a deputy from Chunhong Capital's debt collection team, knew that this was no ordinary business, but something far more sinister. Most of the company's income came from internet broadcasts, but their major expenses were also in broadcast sponsorships, a form of wash trading. This suggested the company was likely a front for money laundering and tax evasion, clearly operating as a criminal organization. The conversation would be simple then, as our boy had no patience for pleasantries or wasted time. Kang Jang-dae, the CEO of Sam Ak Entertainment and the so-called Banpo God Building owner, lay broken on the ground. He had been brutally beaten, blood spattering his face as he struggled to understand what was happening. Shin Jung-woo simply stared down at him, his gaze unwavering as he delivered his command. He demanded that Kang Jang-dae stop sponsoring Hong Areum, a directive the CEO immediately rejected with a furious outburst. His defiant words were met with another swift, brutal strike, silencing his protests instantly. Shin Jung-woo was not one to repeat himself, especially when his words were ignored. Our boy had made it abundantly clear that refusal was not an option in this negotiation. Kang Jang-dae lay defeated, clutching his head in agony as Shin Jung-woo prepared for the next step. Our boy then held up a knife, his message becoming disturbingly clear. If words weren't enough, perhaps the loss of an ear would convince him. The realization of what was about to happen finally broke Kang Jang-dae, and he cried out in desperate surrender. Leaving the scene, Shin Jung-woo calmly reported that the conversation had gone well, and it was time to move to the next stage. He was a man of action, and his plans were unfolding perfectly. The world of internet broadcasting continued, unaware of the violent shifts behind the scenes. Hong Areum was stuck in last place, completely reliant on her sponsor, Banpo God Building owner. Other streamers openly mocked her, asking how it felt to be an incompetent doormat, even though her stream was still live. She seethed with fury as the insults piled on, her face contorting in a mixture of anger and disbelief. To be in last place was for losers, she thought, and she was anything but that. She couldn't accept this humiliation, screaming that there was no way she could be in last place. Her outburst disrupted the entire broadcast, drawing shocked and annoyed looks from everyone present. The other streamers exchanged glances, a mix of pity and disdain on their faces. One of them gently tried to intervene, calling her name in an attempt to de-escalate the situation, but she was beyond reasoning, caught in the throes of her public downfall. The manager, furious at the disruption, ordered her to get out. He couldn't believe her audacity, screaming like that when she was already in last place. She tried to plead with him, claiming it was a mistake, but her words fell on deaf ears. The manager shouted for her to be dragged out, refusing to let her ruin the stream any further. He then turned to the camera, promising viewers an even better time to make up for the last place bitch's disruption. As she was pulled away, she desperately cried out that she could still get donations, but her words were unheard. Her rival, with a mocking smile, wished her a safe trip home, relishing in her public humiliation. Hong Arium gritted her teeth, her eyes burning with a fierce desire for revenge. She screamed that she wouldn't let them get away with what they had done, her voice raw with unadulterated rage. Her rivals merely watched her departure, their expressions a mix of triumph and satisfaction. Thus, Hong Arium was confirmed in last place for the day, and a clip of her cursing went viral, titled, "The Last Place Girl's Roar," earning her the nickname Last Place Girl. She was unable to appear on ranking broadcasts for a while, desperately missing her sponsors' donations. She believed without her, no one would get donations, but then she saw something that shocked her. Her bestie, Li Huiyon, had just received 10,000 hearts as soon as her stream started. Huiyong's sudden rise in popularity felt strange to our girl, almost unnatural. The next day, Hong Arium went to school, where Huiyong greeted her with a wide, innocent smile. She was full of praise for Huiyon's amazing performance the other day. Huiyong then asked if they could talk for a moment, her tone sweet and inviting. Huiyong embraced her, telling her how thrilled she was watching her stream. It was a scene of perfect friendship, or so it seemed. Huiyong then reminded her that she didn't get her on the broadcast for nothing, hinting at a deeper game. Then, Huiyong presented Hong Arium with an expensive gift, claiming it was to celebrate her friend being in first place. Hong Arium was taken aback by the expensive present, wondering why her friend would give her something like that. Huiyong insisted that such a gift was nothing for her bestie, then leaned in to ask about her big spender, claiming besties don't hide things. Hong Arium was surprised by the question, but a new opportunity began to form in her mind. She knew Huiyong's big spender had to be rich for her to take first place so easily. Huiyong, still smiling, pushed to meet the big spender, even suggesting a meal date. Huiyong, naive to the broadcast world's true nature, didn't realize the implications of her request. Arium planned to coax the big spender's number from her, at the very least. But then, Huiyong dropped a bombshell. The big spender wanted to meet Hong Arium as well. This news completely caught Hong Arium off guard, a wave of excitement washing over her. A wide, triumphant smile spread across her face. She walked with a newfound bounce in her step, feeling like this was an incredible stroke of luck. She had worried about how to steal Huiyong's big spender, but it seemed fate had intervened. The big spender was an entertainment company CEO who wanted to scout her, and the smell of money was sweet. She recalled Huiyong telling her that the big spender was part of a startup company which generously supported its streamers. This explained Huiyong's sudden surge of sponsorship, and now it was her turn. She gushed with gratitude, completely unaware of the trap being laid for her. She knew she had to seize this chance, no matter what. She scanned the luxurious restaurant, eager to meet the person who would change her fate. She thought of all the annoying rivals who had laughed at her, promising herself that she would make them pay. She vowed to make the big spender hers and rake in 100 times the sponsorship her rivals would ever earn. Then, a voice called her name, and she turned, a thrill of anticipation running through her. This was it, the beginning of her comeback. He introduced himself as Shen Zhongwu, the CEO of Chunhong Entertainment. Hong Arium was delighted, shaking his hand, ready to begin her new career. But in his mind, he had a very different message for her. She was dead meat. As he led her to a more private spot, his true identity as a debt collector, a loan shark, remained hidden. He knew this was only the beginning for Hong Arium. It was time for her to fall into the abyss. Hong Arium, a struggling streamer, was about to discover that the most generous offer could hide the deepest trap. A menacing debt collector, Teacher Kim, gathered his small-time debtors, explaining a surprisingly simple way to delay their looming repayment dates. His instructions were clear. They just needed to visit a specific restaurant every single day during lunch hour for the next 3 months and act like regular customers. The debtors, confused, murmured amongst themselves, wondering why this seemingly benign act would help their situation with the notorious old man. Teacher Kim revealed that the restaurant owner had borrowed a substantial sum from the old man, and this unusual request was part of their collection strategy. He smiled, a dark glint in his eyes, explaining that this was the old man's unique method of collection, a strategy that Kim Sang-an, his young apprentice, found hard to believe. Kim Sang-an, observing the scene, couldn't quite grasp how helping a debtor could possibly be a method of collection, but he decided to trust his mentor. He knew he would have to see it for himself after 3 months to truly understand the twisted logic behind the old man's notorious reputation. Meanwhile, Hong A. Riem, known online as I-Ain, found herself in a plush office, listening to the young CEO of Chun Hong Entertainment outline an ambitious plan for her. The CEO's goal was simple, to transform her into the top star of the ranking broadcast, and he was willing to invest all of the company's capital to achieve it. I-An's eyes widened at the prospect of becoming a top star, a dream that felt impossibly close given her current struggling status. He promised her a contract with terms so generous they rivaled those offered to top-tier celebrities should she choose to sign with his company. She listened, a smile playing on her lips, acknowledging that the terms were indeed incredibly generous, perhaps even too good to be true. A flicker of suspicion crossed her mind. She had come intending to exploit him, but the terms were so favorable they made her question his true motives. He seemed a little too young to be a CEO, and the whole situation felt subtly fishy, stirring unease within her despite the tempting offer. The CEO, sensing her hesitation, playfully asked if he looked like a scammer, quickly reassuring her that he understood her doubts. He admitted that even he found the terms to be exceptionally good, which was precisely why he had prepared something to put her mind at ease. To prove his sincerity, he announced that he would arrange for her to take their A-streamer, Hui Yun's, spot as a substitute on the ranking broadcast that very night. If she appeared on the broadcast, he explained, she would witness their sincerity firsthand and understand the true potential of his offer. I-An's heart pounded. The ranking broadcast was a huge opportunity, a chance to truly test the waters of this incredible proposal. Later that night, in the bustling broadcast studio, the host excitedly announced that Hui Yun couldn't make it, introducing I-An as the substitute. I-An sat, attempting to appear composed, but internally she was seething, having only agreed to earn some quick pocket change, not face this public humiliation. The comment section exploded with negativity. Viewers were mercilessly cursing her out, demanding Hui Yun and calling I-An trash. Her face contorted in anger. She couldn't believe how quickly the viewers had turned on her after sucking up to her just fine before. She realized with dawning horror that the CEO had no intention of helping her. He had simply called her there to be publicly ridiculed. Just as she was about to explode, a notification sound chimed and a massive donation flashed across the screen, stopping her cold. The host, initially bewildered, then announced the shocking news. I-An had just received a donation, a truly enormous one. I-An's eyes widened, a manic grin spreading across her face as she saw the numbers. 500,000 hearts, a new record. She was ecstatic, her previous anger replaced by overwhelming joy as she realized this unprecedented donation had instantly propelled her to first place. With her newfound success, Hong A-Room walked confidently, having made up her mind she would sign the contract with Chun Hong Entertainment. The CEO, a subtle smirk on his face, readily agreed, promising to prepare the contract immediately, his plans falling perfectly into place. IA, now feeling emboldened, inquired if she would have to appear with Hui Yong going forward, worried about sharing the top spot. He quickly reassured her, dismissing her concerns with a casual wave, his words designed to keep her focused on her rising star. She smiled, convinced that this was her golden ticket, the moment her life would finally turn around, and readily agreed to the terms. The CEO watched her, a knowing glint in his eyes, as Hong A-Room enthusiastically signed the contract, sealing her fate with Chun Hong Entertainment. Immediately, she began receiving the best treatment money could buy, starting with high-end aesthetic procedures that promised to transform her. She winced through various peels, skin boosters, and lifts, enduring the stinging pain for the sake of her glamorous new image. Next came the luxury shopping spree, where she was outfitted with broadcast ensembles costing millions, solidifying her new top star persona. She also committed to personal training, including Pilates and weight training, diligently working to maintain her meticulously sculpted figure. Soon, and became the undisputed queen of sponsorships, earning phenomenal amounts on every ranking broadcast, her arrogance soaring. She reveled in her success, dreaming of transcending internet broadcasting to become a true celebrity, her ambition knowing no bounds. Just as her arrogance reached its peak, the 3-month settlement date with Chun Hong Entertainment arrived, bringing with it a chilling reckoning. She entered the CEO's office, brimming with confidence, certain that her diligent work on the broadcast every single day would yield a massive payout. With a smug smile, she told the CEO she was there, expecting to receive a large amount of money for her hard work. He acknowledged her presence, his expression unreadable, explaining that he had called her in person to ensure no mistakes were made in calculating such a large sum. Ayn nodded eagerly, her mind already envisioning the vast fortune she was about to receive, completely oblivious to the trap. The CEO began typing on his laptop, the rapid clicks of the keys echoing in the room, intensifying her anticipation. She watched his fingers dance across the keyboard, her heart pounding with excitement, convinced he was tallying her immense earnings. Then, with a decisive press, his finger came down on the delete key, a subtle yet sinister action that went unnoticed by her. He looked up, a cold predatory glint in his eyes, and announced the total settlement amount, his voice devoid of warmth. Back at the ruined restaurant, Kim Sang-un listened intently as Teacher Kim explained the true nature of their collection methods. Kim Sang-un had been confused, wondering why they would help Hong A-ryum, but Teacher Kim clarified that he wasn't helping her at all. Teacher Kim explained that his actions were merely a clever way to plant false hope, a powerful trigger that could lead people into deeper debt. He then recounted the story of the restaurant owner who had initially owed them over 400 million won but had been diligently paying it back. Kim Sang-un looked around the desolate restaurant, the physical manifestation of the old man's twisted collection strategy. The owner had borrowed 50 million won from the old man to open his restaurant, which, thanks to his hard work, had been doing fairly well. He had even managed to pay back half his debt, regularly making principal and interest payments until 3 months ago. That's when the debt collectors started sending in their fake customers, creating an illusion of booming business. The once quiet neighborhood business was suddenly swamped with more than 3 times its usual number of customers every single day. The owner, believing his luck had finally turned, borrowed another 100 million won to expand, eager to seize the opportunity. But the moment he secured the additional loan, the magic of the swarming customers vanished, leaving him with a massive, unmanageable debt. Kim Sang-un watched the restaurant owner, now a broken man, sitting amidst the ruins of his once promising business, his dreams shattered. The owner cried, realizing with a crushing blow that his life had been meticulously set up to fail by the very people he thought were helping him. Teacher Kim, a cruel smirk on his face, emphasized that of all the triggers that could lead a person into debt, false hope was the most powerful. He explained that he had planted that very false hope in Hong A-ryum, just as they had done with the restaurant owner. Back in the CEO's office, Ayan's face went pale as he finally revealed the number she had been waiting for. The CEO's smile was unsettling as he stated her total settlement amount, minus 300 million won. Ayan stammered, utterly bewildered, asking what minus could possibly mean in this context. The CEO's smile widened, a predatory gleam in his eyes, as he triumphantly held up her signed contract, declaring her a debtor, a dumbass. Ayan's face contorted in a mix of confusion and dawning horror as she stared at the contract, slowly grasping the gravity of her situation. He told her to pay it back, starting today, his voice dripping with venom, the facade of the generous CEO completely shattered. She screamed, her voice a raw cry of betrayal and disbelief, as the reality of her predicament crashed down on her. Her face was a mask of fury and desperation, unable to comprehend how she had fallen into such a meticulously crafted trap. The CEO leaned in close, his voice cold and clear, explaining that she now owed him exactly 300 million won. A man with blood on his face and broken glass in his hand, a masked figure looming behind him. This is the world of debt bound by blood, where debt isn't just money, it's a leash around your throat and someone always holds the other end. 300 million won. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. It wasn't a request or a negotiation. It was a wall dropped in front of someone who had no idea the ground beneath her had already been sold. He stood close enough to make it feel like a threat dressed as a conversation. She looked up at him, not with fear yet, but with the last sparks of someone who still thought they had a choice in what came next. 2 faces in the same frame, one twisted with shock, the other already braced for the fight. Hong A-ryum had been through enough to know when a man was trying to rattle her. She just hadn't learned yet that this one wasn't bluffing. He grabbed her by the hair and yanked. Not out of rage, out of method. This was how he made people understand that the rules had already changed and they were the last to know. Her cry cut through the room like a wire pulled tight. From above, the two of them looked almost ordinary. A man in a suit, a woman in white. But his grip on her shoulder told the whole story. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just steers you where it wants you to go. She clawed at his arm. He didn't flinch. The gap between how hard she fought and how little it moved him was the cruelest part. Not the grip itself, but the proof of what it meant about where she stood. He threw her down, and the word that came with it, from now on, was worse than the fall. It meant the past was already over. What came next was his to design, and she had no say in the blueprint. Blood at the corner of her mouth. One eye wide, one eye barely open. She was hurt, but she was still looking. Still taking stock of what had just happened, still trying to find the angle that got her out of this room whole. He looked down at her on the floor, the way a man looks at a problem he's already solved. No gloating, no cruelty in his face. Just the calm of someone who had been here before and knew exactly what step came next. She was on her knees, hair across her face, blood on her lip, tears she hadn't chosen to cry. This was the moment the debt stopped being a number and became something she had to carry in her body every single day going forward. His glasses caught the light and hit his eyes. That blank composure was the most unsettling thing about him. The sense that nothing she said or did was going to reach whatever was behind it. He had already decided how this went. She kept her head down, but the fight hadn't left her yet. She was still trying to make sense of it. The debt, the contract, the man in the suit treating her life like a line item. None of it felt real, which made it worse. The contract appeared like a magic trick with no joy in it. She had signed it, her own hand, her own name. His associate grinned like a man who enjoyed this part. The paper made her rage feel small and her options feel smaller. She erupted, called it a scam, called it illegal, demanded to know what he would do if she refused. These were the right questions, but they were questions asked by someone who still thought the rules of the normal world applied here. He told her the whole world would know she didn't pay her debt. Not a threat of violence, a threat of ruin. He understood something she was still learning, that shame, spread wide enough, can trap a person better than any locked door. One eye in close-up, still sharp, still calculating even through the blur of fear and pain. She heard what he said. The word "what" wasn't confusion, it was the sound of someone realizing the cage was bigger than they thought. He laid it out with the patience of a man who had done this before. Go to school, he follows. Get a job, he follows. Try to live, he follows. The debt wasn't a debt, it was a leash with a very long lead. His associate smiled the way men smile when they hold all the cards and know it. There was no malice in it, just the easy comfort of someone who had never once been the one on the floor. That smile would come back to haunt him. Her face was a map of everything she had just absorbed. Bruised, tear-streaked, still working through the math. She started to call him her homeroom teacher, then stopped. Because that was the wrong word now, and some part of her already knew it. He turned away from her, glasses catching light, posture unchanged. The reveal landed quiet and total. He was the brother of the man whose debt she had inherited. A loan shark. 2 roles, 1 person. The cage had been built long before she arrived. He loomed over her against a red-soaked background, the word shark still fresh in the air. This was the full picture now. Not a teacher, not a collector, but something older and more patient. A man who understood that debt was just ownership with paperwork. Her profile in shadow, lips barely parted, blood still drying. She was processing, not panicking, not crying, just processing. That quiet was either the beginning of surrender or the beginning of something much more dangerous. It was hard to tell which from the outside. Get up, he told her. Not with cruelty, with the blunt efficiency of someone moving on to the next step. She had to work to pay it off. The floor was not where this ended. The floor was just where it started. Wishaw Station rose against a blue sky, clean and civic and completely indifferent to the deal being struck in front of it. This was her new workplace, not a building with a desk, but an open street where strangers would scroll past her life for sport. He walked ahead. She trailed behind, jaw set, arms tight. The city buzzed around them like nothing was wrong. That gap between how large this moment felt to her and how invisible it was to everyone else was its own kind of loneliness. Street streamers filled the block, cameras rolling, stunts running, donations trickling in. This was the electric wire world, people lining the street like birds on a wire, performing their lives for tiny payments. She watched and understood, with dread, where she was headed. Faceless figures lined up in a row, each cradling a phone on a stick, each wearing the same hollow smile. This was the system laid bare. Not people but content, not lives but product. The street swallowed them all the same. One streamer completed the humiliation challenge and grinned for the camera like it was a win. He had earned something. He had also lost something. The crowd behind him kept walking. No one looked twice. That was the point. The screen made it normal. He glanced sideways. She seethed. The neon signs of the street pressed in around them, advertising drinks and clubs and deals. She asked the obvious, if not this, then what? And the answer she already knew was that there was no other option left. She turned to face it fully. The street, the cameras, the whole humiliating circus of it. The bruises were still fresh. The debt was still 300 million. Her expression wasn't defeat. It was someone measuring the distance between where they were and where they needed to be. 300 million. She said it out loud and it hit different in the open air. He didn't react. Just let the number sit between them. He had learned that people needed to hear it a few times before they stopped fighting it. He looked down at her with something almost like patience, the kind that comes not from kindness but from certainty. 5 million in 1 week, he said. His tone made it sound like a favor. The slight smirk made it sound like a trap. Her eyes steadied. The panic had burned off, leaving something harder underneath, a cold, focused look that said she had heard the terms, run the numbers, and made a decision. Not peace with the situation, just refusal to break in front of him. She turned and told him she would do it, voice still shaking slightly, but the words were clear. It wasn't surrender. It was strategy. 5 million in a week felt impossible, but impossible had a direction. Impossible was something she could walk toward. Promise me, she said. Eyes hard, chin steady, bruises still fresh. She wanted a guarantee that 5 million ended it. The demand mattered, not because it would protect her, but because making it meant she still believed in her own right to demand things. He looked at her with something that almost passed for respect, or at least recognition. A small tear tracked down one cheek, which he would never acknowledge. He gave her the guarantee. Whether he meant it was a question the story hadn't answered yet. He told her she would be watched at all times. Don't try anything clever. She bristled and fired back, but the agreement was already done. Two people walking the same street with completely different ideas of who held the power going forward. She sat at the station with the camera rig in front of her, telling herself 5 million was easy. She was ranked first on the platform. She had an audience. She had done this before. What she hadn't done was do it this way, for this reason. Hands clipping the phone into the tripod mount. The screen held her face, calm, composed, almost pretty. This small mechanical act was the line between before and after. Once the red light went on, the debt would be live and so would she. She went live. The chat lit up immediately. Viewers confused, then amused, then cruel. Electric wire, they typed. Outdoor broadcast, Mushan station. The audience smelled something different about this stream, even if they didn't know what it was. They kept watching. They always keep watching. 10,001 hit the screen with a demand to dance. She stared at it. That number, pocket change to whoever sent it, was an insult wrapped in a transaction. She had spent years building an audience and now it was being used against her. Back in the office, he watched the feed with his associate. She still doesn't feel the weight of it, he said, with a flat assessment of a man reading data. She needed to understand what 5 million actually costs, so he made a call. Send that person, he said. 3 words, no heat in them. Whatever came next on that street was not rage or punishment. It was a lesson, calculated and deliberate. He needed her to understand the value of 5 million before she could earn it. A figure in a dark coat approached while she sat between takes, laughing softly at something on her phone. She didn't see him coming. That gap, her ease and his intent, was the whole danger of being watched by someone with a reason to close in. He stepped out from the shadows, weathered face, bucket hat, something jagged in his grin. She spun and looked at him with a question she didn't finish. The look on his face said the answer wasn't going to be comfortable no matter how she asked. He kicked her camera rig clean off the bench. The live stream probably caught it. The wobble, the crack, the sudden tilt of everything. Her reaction was pure shock, then the sharp shift toward fury. This was not a random encounter. This was a message. She came at him with everything, voice raised, hands out, rage fully up. The bruises from earlier hadn't even faded yet. She had already been hit once today by someone bigger than her, and here she was, ready to go again. That took something. His face filled the frame. Hollow eyes, cracked smile, the look of a man who had been desperate for a long time. He explained it. The loan shark had offered to forgive his interest if he kept her in line. He wasn't a threat. He was another victim. Every donation she earned would be cut from his debt too, he said. Her expression shifted. Not to sympathy exactly, but to something colder. She had just learned that the man sent to pressure her was being squeezed just as hard. The web kept getting wider. He leaned in close, voice low, eyes bright with a kind of frantic desperation. He wasn't threatening her anymore. He was begging her. Two people caught in the same trap, close enough to smell each other's fear. The loan shark had been very clever about this. She looked up at him with something newly resolved. Not warm, not forgiving, but decisive. The word finally sat at the top of the panel like a verdict. She had absorbed all of it. The debt, the watcher, the trap. Now she chose what to do with it. She danced in a street for a donation she found humiliating, while her handler turned away in secondhand shame. She did it anyway. That was the whole point of this moment. Not what she felt, but what she chose to do regardless of what she felt. Someone rested a hand on her head, and she smiled with her eyes closed, just for a breath. Not happiness exactly, more like a pause in something hard. The kind of moment that only means something because of how little it costs and how much it gives. She leaned close to the camera with clenched hands and a grim kind of focus. 200,000 won was several dances. She was doing the math in real time, converting humiliation into progress, measuring her dignity against the number that still had 5 million to go. Day 2. 4.5 million saved. She sat on the ground with the tripod beside her, voice quiet, still running the count. The goal was close enough to taste, but not close enough to trust. That gap was where this story lived. A notification landed, 1 million won in a single donation. Her expression didn't leap to joy. It went still instead, eyes measuring. A gift that big, from a stranger, always came with something attached. She had learned enough by now to wonder what it wanted. 3 women appeared, built like trouble, moving like a crew. The one in front wore a bow in her hair and smiled the way people smile when they've already decided how something is going to go. This was the Electric Wire Welcoming Committee, and it wasn't a welcome. One of them sneered, doing street broadcasts without a crew? The question was designed to make her feel small. Street broadcasting had its own hierarchy, its own rules, its own gatekeepers, and she had just walked into their territory with no crew and no permission. She looked at them with flat contempt, not fear, not nerves, just irritation, like finding something unpleasant in a pocket. She had been beaten, dragged, humiliated, and forced to dance for spare change. 3 women with an attitude problem ranked low on her list of concerns. The leader announced it was time to teach her a lesson, wearing the warmth of someone who genuinely enjoyed this. She called it correcting a crazy little sister. The violence that followed wasn't random. It was territorial, organized, and being filmed by at least one of them. They came at her fast, hair pulled, arms grabbed, camera knocked to the concrete. The stream caught every second. Online, the chat exploded, viewers watching a ranked streamer get jumped in real time, some horrified, most just watching, a few typing laughing reactions. No one stepped in. She took the hits with her eyes shut and her teeth locked. The chat ran alongside her pain, commentary, jokes, someone typing that she deserved this for leaving ranking broadcasts. The humiliation of being watched while being hurt was its own separate kind of wound. The leader grinned at the camera. The streamer you watch is getting beaten up, she announced like a host. She had turned the assault into content. Cruelty with an audience is still cruelty, it's just louder, and it stays on the internet forever. She pulled out a hair trimmer with a smile that suggested she had done this before and found it funny every time. The threat to shave her head was not random. Hair meant something. To the audience, to the brand, to the target. They knew that. The trimmer buzzed to life while she was pinned against the wall. She screamed and fought back, not just from fear of the pain, but from understanding exactly what losing her hair would cost her on a platform where appearance was the entire product. Her face was bruised. Her expression was fury, stripped of everything except the core of it. Something in her had gone past fear and past shame, and arrived at a place that was quieter and more dangerous. The sound she made wasn't a cry, it was a decision. He walked through the neon-lit street at night, unhurried, and the notification confirmed it. 5 million won, transferred to the account. He had confirmed it himself. The week was over. The terms had been met. Now came the part she didn't know about yet. He looked at her with something that almost passed for acknowledgement, but his expression was measured, not relieved. The 5 million was just the number she knew about. He was about to explain the number she didn't, and his calm made it worse, not better. Her handler looked broken in a way that had nothing to do with the haircut. Whatever he had just heard from the man in the suit had landed on him like a stone. He stood there, and for a moment neither of them said anything at all. 5 million covered the base amount, but not the interest. The interest had been running the entire time, compounding weekly at a rate she had agreed to in a contract she hadn't read. She had worked herself raw for a week and paid off almost nothing real. She knelt in the street, short hair, stripped down, looking at a number that had gotten bigger while she worked to make it smaller. The silence that followed wasn't despair. It was the silence of someone doing math they had desperately hoped would come out different. Her face was wrecked and empty and somehow still watching. Short hair, dark circles, bruises fading to yellow. She had given up a week of herself and come out deeper in the hole than when she started. That knowledge settled in behind her eyes like weight. He looked at her with a kind of clinical satisfaction. The man who designed the trap, explaining how well it worked. 10 million by next week, he said. That was what the interest had grown to. The math was perfect and completely merciless. She knelt on the pavement below him, hair gone, spirit battered, the city glowing indifferently behind them both. The image of these two said everything, one standing, one on the ground, and the space between them filled with a debt that only ever grew larger. Elsewhere, a woman stood in a classroom, calm, composed, dressed like someone with nothing to hide. The school behind her was quiet and sunlit. Whoever she was, she existed in a different register than the street outside, but the story had not forgotten she was there. Back in the neon dark, her handler's face collapsed inward. A man pushed past the edge of what he could hold. He had watched everything. He had done what was asked of him. And now the number had doubled, and he understood there was no end to this. She stood in a back room facing a wall of suited men, Samak Entertainment, the label etched on the door behind them. She had walked into a gangster's office to ask for something. These were men who owned things, and she had come with nothing but nerve. Kang Jong-dae, CEO of Samak Entertainment, known on the street as the Bampo God Building owner. A man who had his own reasons to want the loan shark found. He didn't need her to explain much. He said he'd been looking for that guy anyway. Her battered face split into a smile that had nothing gentle in it. Not relief, not gratitude, just the cold satisfaction of someone who had found the one lever in a room full of walls. Whatever she had suffered, it had led her here, and here had teeth. Kang assembled his men. A room full of hard faces, scarred hands, suits that had seen worse nights than this one. The order was given to assemble and grab their tools. A machine had been set in motion, and it had one direction, toward the man in glasses. But he was already there. No need for anyone to move anywhere. He had come personally, calm, dressed in black, standing in their hallway like he had been invited. Whatever he had come to say, his arrival alone was the most dangerous thing that had happened all chapter. Debt-bound by blood. The weight of old favors and new debts often led men down dangerous paths, especially in the world of loan sharks. In a quiet corner of a bustling city, two powerful figures met over coffee, their conversation laced with unspoken tensions and competing interests. Chairman Hwang Byung-hyun, head of Chunhong Capital, firmly refused the request, his gaze unyielding as he protected his most valuable asset. Chairman Baek Jeon of Baek Jeon Loans listened, a spoon hovering near his lips, his expression a mix of frustration and resignation at the other man's obstinacy. Hwang continued his refusal, explaining that his man, Kim Sang-an, was simply too crucial to loan out, even for a short time. For him, Sang-an was not just an employee, he was a golden goose, a rare talent whose skills were indispensable to his organization. Hwang offered a slight smile, acknowledging the compliment on Sang-an's effectiveness, understanding the high regard his rival held for his man. Lee Gu-byung, a manager at Baek Jeon Loans, watched the exchange from his seat, a subtle smugness playing on his face, feeling underestimated. He felt a deep disappointment that his chairman still compared him to Sang-an, implying his own methods were somehow inferior. Baek Gaeon patiently explained his reasoning, pointing out that Gayubeum's collection tactics were often too rough, lacking Sang-an's finesse. Lee Gu-byung turned his head away, a quiet irritation brewing within him. He was tired of always being measured against another man's shadow. Hwang then posed a provocative question to Baek Jeon, asking him to choose between Sang-an and Ju-byum based on who was more useful. Lee Gu-byum's eyes sharpened, an intense gaze fixed on Hwang. This was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance to prove his worth. Kim San-an, our protagonist, arrived at a nondescript building, immediately sensing the unusual number of men gathered, recognizing an ambush. He entered the room, his expression calm and collected, observing the 30 or so men before him with an unnerving stillness. The loan sharks inside erupted in panic, utterly bewildered by Sang-an's sudden appearance, wondering how he could have gotten past their defenses. Sang-an stood tall, an imposing figure in the doorway, his presence alone enough to make the room tense with unspoken threats. Banpo Oppa, the leader of the loan sharks, glared at Sang-an, angrily accusing him of causing their financial troubles this month. Sang-an met his gaze with cool indifference, dismissing Banpo Oppa's complaints as irrelevant to his purpose. Hong A-ryum, a scared teacher, tried to interject, attempting to plead with Banpo Oppa, but her voice was weak and trembling. Banpo Oppa quickly silenced her, remembering how Sang-an had easily beaten them before, but still believing they had the numbers now. He scoffed at A-ryum, telling her to shut her mouth, convinced that despite Sang-an's strength, he was still just one man against many. The loan sharks, now emboldened by their numbers, advanced, their faces set in grim determination, ready to overpower Sang-an. Banpo Oppa gave the order to kill him, a chilling command that echoed through the tense silence of the room. Sang-an moved in a blur, a whirlwind of swift, brutal strikes, easily deflecting the initial assault with practiced ease. Banpo Oppa watched, his expression shifting from anger to stunned disbelief, unable to comprehend the speed and power his men were facing. He let out a pained gasp as Sang-an swiftly took down 4 of his men, their bodies collapsing to the floor in quick succession. Banpo Oppa's eyes widened in horror. He couldn't believe how many men had fallen in the brief moment he had looked away. Sang-an's face remained impassive, a cold resolve in his eyes as he continued to dismantle the group with relentless efficiency. The fight concluded quickly, more bodies littering the floor. The earlier bravado of the loan sharks replaced by painful groans. Hong-A-Riem screamed, covering her mouth as she witnessed the brutal display, overwhelmed by the sheer violence. Sang-an delivered a final, devastating blow, sending another man flying, his dominance absolute and unquestionable. Ariem averted her gaze, trembling, while Banpo Oppa stared in utter shock, his world crumbling around him. Banpo Oppa lay on the ground, beaten and broken, blood staining his face, his earlier confidence completely shattered. Sang-an stood over him, his hand raised, ready to deliver a finishing strike, a silent, terrifying judgment. He brought his fist down with crushing force, ending the resistance with a decisive, impactful blow. Banpo Oppa's face contorted in pain and realization. He understood now that there was no escaping this man. Sang-an's cold, intense gaze offered no mercy, leaving no doubt that there was truly no way out for his opponent. Hong-A-Riem huddled in fear, tears streaming down her face, convinced that she might truly die in this horrifying situation. Sang-an stood amidst the fallen men, the sole figure remaining upright, his presence a stark testament to his overwhelming power. Banpo Oppa, defeated and desperate, pressed his forehead to the floor, begging for mercy, pleading for just one more chance. He groveled, explaining that the circumstances that led to their actions were unavoidable, hoping to appeal to Sang-an's understanding. Sang-an listened, his expression unreadable, betraying no sympathy for the man's pleas or his predicament. He walked past the groveling Banpo Oppa, dismissing his excuses as irrelevant, his focus already shifting to the real power player present. Sang-an then turned to Hwang Byung-hoyen, who had been observing the entire time, and mockingly told Banpo Oppa to lift his head. He then confronted Hwang, who was also a powerful figure, now clearly implicated in the night's chaos. Sang-an kicked a nearby desk, asserting his dominance and making it clear that he was in control of this situation. A knowing smirk played on Sang-an's lips. He understood exactly why Hwang was here and what his presence truly meant. Hwang looked down at the defeated Banpo Oppa, acknowledging the undeniable mess, realizing the full scope of the problem. Sang-an calmly stated the obvious. This place, and by extension Hwang, had a significant debt with Baek Jeon loans. He paused, a subtle smile spreading across his face, recognizing the deeper implications of Hwang's involvement. Sang-an then looked at Hong-A-Riem, making the connection between her presence and the intricate web of debt and conflict. He pondered aloud whether he should claim damages from Chunghong Capital, a veiled threat to Hwang's organization. Hwang quickly conceded the damage, admitting that pursuing a formal claim would create an awkward and difficult situation between their companies. Sang-an's eyes gleamed with an intelligent glint. He sensed a different kind of opportunity, something more interesting than a simple financial claim. He then revealed his true curiosity, the question that had been lingering in his mind about who truly held more power between them. Hwang recalled a recent conversation where old associates debated the relative merits of Sang-an versus Lee Gyu-byom, comparing their unique skills. Baek Jeon, still smarting from the earlier comparison, quickly asserted that Sang-an was unequivocally the more useful of the two. Hwang agreed that Sang-an was indeed highly capable, but then brought up Lee Gyu-byom's brutal reputation, his infamous nickname in the industry. He had been curious if the loan shark teacher was truly the top loan shark, and now, the circumstances had provided a perfect test. Hwang offered a proposal, suggesting a simpler resolution than formal negotiations, something that might prove more satisfying for both sides. He proposed a direct confrontation. If Sang-an could defeat Lee Gyu-byom, all the damages and complications would be forgotten. Lee Gyu-byom's eyes widened, a primal excitement stirring within him. This was the challenge he craved, a chance to finally prove his unique worth. Sang-an's gaze hardened, a fierce determination replacing his earlier calm. The stage was now set for an epic showdown, and he was ready. The stage was now set for a clash between two legends, and everyone held their breath, waiting to see if Baek Jeon's mad dog would finally meet his match. Sang An, a debt collector known for his cold efficiency, laid out the terms of a brutal bargain to his opponent, Lee Guo-byung, asking if this high-stakes proposal seemed fair enough to him. From Gu-byung's perspective, there was no logical reason to reject such a tempting offer, especially given the desperate circumstances surrounding them. A subtle, predatory smile played on Sang An's lips, hinting at further complications as he prepared to reveal the full, sinister extent of his proposal. Sang An then added a crucial, unexpected condition. If he emerged victorious, the woman's enormous debt would be completely erased, leaving her utterly stunned and speechless. He acknowledged the woman's significant financial liabilities, yet confessed to holding a different kind of obligation, one he felt deeply towards Baek Jeon, his benefactor. With a quiet, steely resolve, Gu-byung accepted the unexpected terms, his fists clenching in anticipation, ready for the brutal fight to begin. Gu-byung, the mad dog, grinned back, pleased his opponent hadn't backed out of the high-stakes agreement, a rare challenge he clearly savored. He cast a quick glance at the terrified woman, a silent acknowledgement passing between them of the desperate situation she found herself trapped within. Sang An, ever the provocateur, then asked if Gu-byung wanted to seal the deal with a thumbprint, mockingly suggesting it be done in his own blood. The air crackled with raw tension as the two men launched themselves at each other, the fight erupting with a sudden, explosive force that shook the very ground. The conflict was about to unfold under the chilling shadow of Baek Jeon Loans, a name whispered with fear and reverence in the city's darkest corners. From the outside, the Baek Jeon Loans headquarters stood as an imposing, formidable fortress, a stark and unyielding symbol of its immense power and influence. This was no ordinary loan shark operation. Baek Jeon Loans was a massive, ruthless enterprise, its clientele almost exclusively made up of dangerous criminal organizations. Most lenders prudently shied away from such dangerous debtors due to the incredibly low recovery rates, a financial risk few were willing to take on. Yet, Baek Jeon Loans operated with a chilling difference. Utterly unconcerned by these inherent dangers, their methods brutally effective and unwavering. The reason for their unprecedented success was disarmingly simple. Every single loan shark working for them possessed the raw, undeniable capability to extract debts from even the most hardened criminals. Among these fearsome and relentless collectors, one man stood out above all others, his brutal reputation preceding him in every dark corner of the city. He was universally acknowledged as the undisputed master of fist-fighting, a living legend in the unforgiving, violent world of debt recovery. This was Lee Gu-byung, the notorious mad dog of Baek Jeon, who charged into the fray with a wild, unrestrained fury, a force of pure, untamed aggression. Sang An observed his opponent's aggressive rush, noting the cunning behind such an immediate, decisive move, a clever attempt to seize the initiative. Gu-byung's movements were a blinding blur, his incredible speed carrying him across the room in an instant, closing the distance with terrifying, explosive efficiency. He landed a powerful, bone-jarring kick, the impact sending a shockwave through Sang An's body, a clear and brutal statement of his intent. Sang An, initially impressed by the calculated aggression, wondered if Gu-byung was a more strategic, calculating fighter than his wild reputation suggested. But as the fight continued to rage, he quickly realized his initial assessment was entirely incorrect, a crucial and potentially dangerous misjudgment. Gu-byung was not a strategist, not a planner. His fighting style defied easy categorization, leaving Sang An momentarily bewildered by its raw, untamed nature. He fought purely on instinct, a primal surge of power and aggression, each move an immediate, visceral reaction to the moment, not a thought-out plan. Gu-byung's face split into a wide, menacing smile, a clear sign that he was deeply savoring every moment of the intense and brutal combat. Sang An found himself unable to dodge the relentless, instinctive blows, taking the full, concussive force of his opponent's powerful assault. The impact of Gu-byung's punches was immense, each one rattling Sang An to his core, leaving him genuinely surprised by the sheer, unbridled power. From the sidelines, the woman watched in wide-eyed horror, completely overwhelmed by the brutal display of strength unfolding before her eyes. A flicker of desperate, fragile hope ignited within her, the possibility that Gu-byung might actually defeat Sang An and free her from her torment. Sang An, however, was far from defeated. He felt only a profound disappointment in Gu-byung, believing the chairman's high praise for him was entirely misplaced. He sarcastically concluded that the chairman's judgment must be severely failing him, given Gu-byung's raw, unrefined performance thus far. Gu-byung continued his relentless, instinct-driven attack, a whirlwind of fists and feet, pressing his advantage with unwavering, brutal intensity. Sung-an, observing closely through the pain, recognized that his opponent's innate speed and lightning-fast reflexes indeed surpassed his own capabilities. This inherent physical advantage allowed Guibom to execute a series of truly unpredictable and devastating moves, constantly catching Sung-an off guard. Realizing he needed a completely new approach, Sung-an decided to restrict Guibom's wild movements, aiming to reduce the chaotic unpredictability of his attacks. With a swift, unexpected maneuver, Sung-an managed to grab Guibom's arm, momentarily halting the relentless onslaught and abruptly shifting the momentum of the fight. The woman gasped aloud, utterly astonished by Sung-an's sudden, precise counter, unable to comprehend such a fluid, almost impossible move. She continued to stare, her mind racing, questioning how any human could possibly execute such an inhuman, graceful action amid such chaos. Sung-an then dismissed Guibom's grab-and-beat style as nothing more than a basic, uninspired tactic, easily countered by superior skill. He swiftly retaliated, using his own unique technique to bind Guibom, effectively turning the tide of the brutal exchange in his favor once again. The woman, watching the stunning turn of events, was filled with awe and a creeping sense of dread, realizing with certainty that Sung-an had emerged victorious. Sung-an looked down at the defeated Guibom, a hint of disdain in his eyes as he calmly assessed the immediate outcome of their brutal battle. He remarked that he had expected to learn something profound from Guibom, whom others respectfully called teacher, but found absolutely nothing worthwhile. Guibom lay still, his body battered and broken on the ground, a stark testament to Sung-an's overwhelming power and technical skill. With the fight decisively concluded, Sung-an calmly took his leave, the job done, his imposing presence no longer required in the ruined room. Elsewhere, Chairman Baek-gyeon questioned a colleague wondering why Sung-an had previously claimed Guibom was the superior fighter in their organization. Sung-an had explained that Guibom possessed an intense, unyielding competitive spirit, a fire that burned bright and constantly within him. He predicted that Guibom would not rest until he had another chance to face Sung-an, seeing it as a true challenge to his pride and reputation. Sung-an had reminded the chairman of his earlier words, that Guibom was the type to rush in and bite fiercely when given even the slightest opening. The chairman conceded, acknowledging that no one else in their entire organization could operate with Sung-an's level of cold clinical efficiency. He had only intended for Guibom to impart some much-needed discipline to their younger recruits, a simple and straightforward task. His colleague expressed deep concern about a potential future confrontation between Manager Lee and Sung-an, fearing the inevitable, brutal consequences. The chairman, however, remained completely unfazed, confident that Guibom would learn a valuable lesson from this experience and return stronger, more refined. Guibom, though visibly injured and defeated, slowly rose, a defiant, burning glint in his eyes as he recognized the simple, painful truth behind his loss. His defeat stemmed from a single critical flaw: he had not fought cleanly enough, a profound realization that stung with bitter, self-inflicted clarity. Because of this fundamental lack of precision and clean technique, he knew deep down that he would always fall short, always ultimately lose. Sung-an, observing Guibom struggle to stand, asked if he had perhaps been too forceful, a hint of mock concern in his cold voice. He then added, with a touch of biting sarcasm, that to any casual bystander, it must surely appear as though he was utterly destroying Guibom. Guibom, still defiant despite his injuries, asserted that the true victor would only be known once their brutal encounter had reached its absolute end. He launched himself forward once more, adopting a straightforward, standard fighting style, aiming to finish the fight quickly with raw force. His strategy was direct, to dig in and end the confrontation with overwhelming, decisive force, leaving no room for a prolonged or drawn-out struggle. Sung-an, however, effortlessly anticipated the attack, his gaze unwavering as Guibom lunged with renewed, desperate determination. He calmly pointed out that this exact same approach had already failed Guibom once before, a futile and predictable repetition of tactics. Sung-an then reminded Guibom that he had explicitly warned him about this very flaw, his words echoing with a cold, unforgiving certainty. He reiterated his core criticism: Guibom simply did not fight with the necessary cleanliness, lacking the refined precision required for true mastery. Guibom reacted with a sharp gasp, realizing the painful truth in Sung-an's words, his eyes wide with a sudden, agonizing understanding of his mistake. He found himself suspended helplessly mid-air, completely unable to maneuver or dodge Sung-an's impending, inevitable counterattack. Sung-an explained that Gyubyom relied too heavily on his raw physical abilities and instincts, making his moves inherently unpredictable but also expansive. Yet, this reliance on large, unpredictable movements ultimately became Gyubyom's greatest weakness, making him easily exploitable and vulnerable. Sung-an delivered a final, crushing blow, the impact forcing a choked cough of blood from Gyubyom's lips as he crumpled to the ground once more. Sung-an had delivered a devastating lesson, concluding that even movements meant to be unpredictable become entirely readable when an opponent can truly anticipate their underlying patterns. Gyubyom lay defeated for the second time, his body battered and scarred, yet a small grim smile played on his lips as he admitted to learning something profoundly unsettling. Sung-an looked down at his vanquished foe, a chillingly satisfied expression on his face. The victory undeniable, but the true test of Gyubyom's new understanding was yet to come. Our protagonist, In, had been trying to build a new life for herself, working diligently at a local store. For a while, he had been watching her from a distance, checking in on her from time to time since they had cut ties. She seemed to be thriving, her expression often carrying a quiet determination that spoke of resilience. He observed her closely, noting the subtle changes in her demeanor as she navigated her daily routine. From the shadows of his car, he kept his gaze fixed on her, a silent guardian ensuring her path remained clear of the darkness they had once shared. He watched, a complex mix of emotions swirling within him. Seeing her manage on her own, a faint blush on her cheeks and a trace of sweat on her brow from her efforts, brought a sense of profound relief to him. She was growing stronger, just as he had hoped. She spent her evenings immersed in books, often seen studying intently on the crowded subway, her focus unwavering amidst the hustle and bustle of city life. Her dedication was clear to anyone who saw her. Her eyes, full of quiet ambition, were fixed on the pages of an Introduction to Education textbook. This was her dream, the future she was painstakingly building for herself, far from their shared past. The image of graduation caps soaring through the clear blue sky symbolized the culmination of her hard work and the bright, hopeful future she was stepping into. It was a moment of pure triumph. At her graduation, surrounded by her peers, she finally stood in her cap and gown, moving further away from the abyss of their past. She had achieved what he had always wanted for her. He stood hidden, a bouquet of marigolds clutched in his hand, watching her from afar. He decided then that he would stop checking in on her, allowing her to finally be free. His hope was that she would forget everything that tied her to him, allowing her to truly embrace her new life. The discarded flowers were a silent testament to his decision to sever their last connection. The water swirled menacingly as the title card appeared, signaling a stark shift in the story's tone, a tale of vengeance and retribution, debt-bound by blood. The true cost of past sins was about to be paid. Submerged in the dark water, a muffled cry escaped her lips as she struggled against the invisible force holding her down. The cold embrace of the depths was a terrifying shock. Her face contorted in a silent scream, eyes wide with terror as bubbles escaped her lips. The initial shock of the water quickly gave way to a desperate fight for survival. Water forced its way into her lungs, causing a violent, involuntary gasp. Her body convulsed, desperate for air, as the excruciating pain of drowning began to set in. Her throat seized up, triggering a laryngospasm that intensified the agonizing feeling of suffocation. Every fiber of her being screamed for oxygen, but none would come. On the deck of a boat, he and his associate stood, their figures silhouetted against the dark sea. They watched impassively as the net, holding its struggling captive, was once again lowered into the water. He turned to his associate, a calm yet chilling question in his voice. "Did you know?" His eyes, devoid of emotion, bore into the man beside him. A stopwatch in his hand glowed, displaying a precise 2030. Every second was measured, every moment of torment meticulously calculated as part of his cruel design. His associate, a flicker of unease in his gaze, looked back at him, perhaps questioning the chilling precision of their actions. He knew the depths of his leader's resolve. His eye, cold and unyielding behind his glasses, reflected the dark water below. Peace, he decided, was not a luxury meant for someone like her. The net descended once more, pulling her back into the suffocating depths, a relentless cycle of torture. There would be no escape from her punishment. He pulled her up, and she immediately erupted into a fit of violent coughs, desperately trying to expel the water from her lungs. Her body shuddered with the effort. "Please, please, spare me," she gasped, her voice hoarse and broken, tears streaming down her face. She pleaded for an end to the unbearable torment. Her face was a mask of utter despair, eyes wide and bloodshot, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on her cheek. She was completely broken. His hand remained steady on the lever, his gaze unwavering as he watched her desperate struggle. There would be no mercy from him, not for her. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with raw terror and a desperate plea. But he simply stared back, his expression as cold and unforgiving as the night itself. He stood illuminated by the boat's harsh light, a figure of stern judgment against the dark backdrop of the sea. His decision was final, his resolve unbreakable. His face, half shrouded in shadow, revealed the grim determination etched upon it. This was not just punishment, it was a deeply personal retribution. Her muffled cries echoed from beneath the water as she was plunged back into the dark abyss. The torment was far from over, it was just beginning. His expression remained stoic, his eyes fixed on the water, as he reaffirmed his vow he would not let her die, no matter how much she begged for it. A memory flashed into his mind. Ian, his sister, patiently trying to guide Hong-A-Room, holding a broom as if to gently sweep away her troubles. This was the kindness she had betrayed. Now, Hong-A-Room was bound and screaming silently underwater, paying the ultimate price for her actions. The suffering she inflicted was returned tenfold. His sister's bright, hopeful smile, full of life and dreams, was a painful memory that fueled his unwavering resolve. She deserved so much more than what she got. He watched the net, his grip firm, ensuring her continued suffering. This was for his sister, for the future she had been robbed of by this woman. His eye, reflecting the rain, held a chilling intensity. He would make sure she experienced every ounce of pain his sister had endured because of her. He remembered Ian at her graduation, radiant and full of promise, a future teacher. The image was a stark contrast to the grim scene before him. Hong-A-Room's guttural scream tore through the water as she thrashed, her body racked with pain and terror. The punishment was relentless, precise. Rain lashed down, mirroring the dark storm within him as he oversaw the torture. The grim weather seemed to weep for the tragedy that led to this. Her body convulsed with another violent choke, water spewing from her mouth. She was at her breaking point, her will utterly shattered by the ordeal. Hyung-Nim, this bitch is completely broken, his associate murmured, a hint of concern in his voice. Even he seemed affected by her state. I'm sorry, Hyuk. I was wrong, she whimpered, her voice barely audible, utterly defeated. She had nothing left to offer but her broken apologies. His associate looked at him, searching for a sign, an instruction, anything to indicate their next move. He seemed to question if they had gone far enough. He simply stared at the horizon, his face unreadable, his mind already formulating the next phase of his vengeance. He had a different kind of suffering in store for her. Hong-A-Room lay motionless in the barrel, a husk of her former self, as the two men looked down at her. The physical torture was over, but a new hell awaited. He turned and walked towards the stern of the boat, his steps measured and deliberate. His work was not finished, it was merely transitioning. He stood at the edge of the boat, gazing out at the vast, tranquil ocean, a new dawn breaking over the horizon. His plan was far grander than simple drowning. His silhouette was cast against the rising sun, a symbol of a new, terrifying chapter in his relentless pursuit of justice. He would ensure her future was as bleak as his past. His profile, stark against the colorful sky, showed a man deeply committed to his long game. He would track down every last one of those awful demons. Hong-A-Room sat huddled on the boat, her eyes vacant, her spirit irrevocably broken. She would spend the rest of her life reliving the agony of this day. He pictured Ian, her face alight with an innocent surprise, ready to embark on her journey as a teacher. The memory was a cruel reminder of what was stolen. And held her diploma, a bright future ahead of her, while marigolds, her favorite flowers, lay forgotten in a bin. Her dreams were tragically cut short. She stood among her fellow graduates, a gentle smile on her face, unaware of the cruel fate that awaited her. Those were her last moments of pure happiness. Her soft smile, full of warmth and kindness, was the image he held onto, the driving force behind his unwavering, brutal retribution. This was for her. He knew she would have been standing there, holding those marigolds, proud of her achievement. He would have been there with her, celebrating her success. Baek Sang-woo, his associate, grunted with effort, his muscles straining as he pushed through a grueling workout. His mind was clearly elsewhere. He lifted the heavy barbell, the physical exertion a desperate attempt to drown out the haunting thoughts that plagued him. His body was tired, but his soul was heavier. His back was turned, but the raw intensity of his workout spoke volumes about the internal battle he was fighting. He was pushing himself to the absolute limit. Looking at a picture of IN, a painful regret crossed Baek Sang-woo's face. He wished she were there to scold him, to bring light into his dark world again. A sad, wistful smile touched his lips, his eyes filled with a deep, lingering sorrow. Her absence was a constant ache, a wound that refused to heal. Our teacher, Yong Ye-jun, stood over the terrified Hong A.K.M. as she desperately pleaded for forgiveness, taking all the blame for what had happened. He simply stared down at her, his expression unreadable, letting her fear hang heavy in the air between them on the silent boat. Her entire body trembled uncontrollably, covered in dust and grime, a stark testament to the ordeal she had clearly endured. His gaze was sharp, piercing through her words, as if searching for the hidden truths beneath her frantic apologies and pleas. She looked utterly broken, her eyes wide with the desperate, pleading terror that hinted at a much darker, unspoken secret. He remained silent, a looming, dark figure, as the weight of her confession settled heavily around them on the quiet boat. She finally managed to utter a name that seemed to carry the full burden of her guilt and the reason for her current despair. Our teacher simply listened, his face betraying no emotion, absorbing the full impact of her desperate, tearful revelation. This was the grim reality of a world where debts were bound by blood, and the consequences for breaking them were severe and absolute. The next day, the bright morning light of the school offered a stark contrast to the previous night's dark confession. Inside, our teacher stood before his new class, ready to deliver an announcement that would ripple through their seemingly normal lives. He informed them that Hong A-Kim would be absent for a while, requiring long-term psychiatric hospitalization for her condition. The news sparked immediate whispers among the students, surprised that the once boastful Hong A-Kim had fallen so far, so quickly. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the murmuring faces, noting their casual disregard for the gravity of the situation. One girl, in particular, seemed deeply affected, her face etched with a mix of shock and quiet concern over Hong A-Kim's fate. Our teacher then made a solemn promise, offering a listening ear to anyone who felt troubled by the recent events. The brown-haired student, the class pres, looked thoughtful, his earlier gossip momentarily forgotten as he considered the teacher's unexpected offer of support. Later, outside, the air was thick with tension as students discussed the teacher, nervously opening a can of soda. The brown-haired student, clearly unsettled, worried aloud about how much the new teacher truly understood about their hidden dealings. Another student, equally uneasy, pondered the extent of the teacher's knowledge, realizing the potential threat he posed to their secrets. Their conversation grew hushed, filled with the unspoken fear that their illicit activities might soon come to light. It was only a matter of time, they concluded, before their carefully constructed facade would inevitably crumble under scrutiny. Then, Baek Sang-woo, brimming with overconfidence, scoffed at their worries, dismissing the teacher as a threat entirely. He declared that he wished the teacher would confront him directly, eager for a chance to prove his own strength and dominance. The thought of a showdown with the teacher seemed to excite him, making the entire situation even more thrilling. His smirk was wide and arrogant, a clear challenge to anyone who dared to question his power or authority. The class pres, however, simply walked away, shaking his head at Baek Sang-woo's reckless bravado, knowing it would only lead to trouble. In the PE class, the coach relaxed on the bleachers, convinced that physical education was pointless in modern society. Our teacher, Yeom Ye-jun, stood quietly observing the scene, his presence a stark contrast to the coach's laid-back attitude. He watched intently, his eyes missing nothing, observing each student closely as they went about their unmotivated exercises. A few students half-heartedly attempted pull-ups, their efforts lacking any real enthusiasm or dedication. Then, Baek Sang-woo stepped forward, flexing his impressive physique, clearly proud of the muscle he had built. His display motivated some of the other boys, who expressed admiration for his rapid and dramatic transformation. One student, however, spoke a bit too loudly, commenting on how quickly Baek Sang-woo had gotten so big, hinting at more than just hard work. The casual remark hit a raw nerve, and Baek Sang-woo's face twisted into an expression of seething fury. He lunged at the offending student, grabbing him by the collar, demanding to know what he had just implied. He roared that he had built his body naturally, through pure, grueling effort, denying any suggestion of artificial enhancement. The student, caught off guard, stumbled backward, his face paling with fear as Baek Sang-woo's rage escalated. His anger was a palpable force, his eyes blazing with an intensity that promised serious harm to anyone who dared to insult him. He felt a surge of uncontrollable fury, ready to unleash his built-up aggression on the unfortunate boy. The air crackled with the raw power of his blow, a clear demonstration of his destructive physical capabilities. Our teacher, observing from a distance, remained expressionless, his lips pressed into a thin, knowing line. Just as Baek Sangwoo was about to land another hit, the class pres stepped in, urging them to stop fighting. He sternly told Baek Sangwoo to release the student, reminding him of their teacher's watchful eyes. The PE teacher, finally noticing the commotion, called out to the fighting students, demanding to know what they were doing. Baek Sangwoo gritted his teeth in frustration, reluctantly backing down, his anger still simmering just beneath the surface. The PE teacher, seeing the class pres handle the situation, simply shrugged, confident that everything was under control. Baek Sangwoo stalked away, still fuming, as the other students coughed and tried to recover from the tense altercation. Our teacher, however, offered a subtle, knowing smile, as if this entire display was exactly what he had expected. He turned, his gaze fixed on Baek Sangwoo, a silent understanding passing between them, unspoken but clear. Suddenly, Baek Sangwoo was transported back to a chilling memory. A moment on a boat with our teacher. He remembered the teacher's intense stare, the same cold, calculating look that had struck fear into him before. In that memory, he had been utterly terrified, realizing the teacher was the real psycho he had heard about. He saw himself attacking teacher Kim Won-an, a violent outburst that had led to the teacher's disappearance and Hong Ae-kyum's hospitalization. The memory fueled his current rage, reminding him of the consequences of his past actions and the teacher's inescapable presence. Unable to contain his simmering anger, Baek Sangwoo decided he needed to work it out, heading to the gym. He walked away from the PE field, leaving the lingering tension behind, but carrying his fury with him. The gym was a place where he could release his aggression, pushing his body to its limits until he forgot everything else. He began his routine, focusing on his arms, determined to push himself to the point of exhaustion and physical pain. He started with triceps, a light warm-up, trying to channel his destructive energy into a productive workout. His determination was clear, his jaw set, as he continued his intense regimen, oblivious to anything but his own effort. Then, a sudden presence made him stop. Our teacher stood before him, observing his workout with an unreadable expression. Baek Sangwoo looked up, surprised and confused, wondering why his homeroom teacher was suddenly in the gym with him. Our teacher's gaze was direct, a silent challenge, as he prepared to deliver a remark that would ignite Baek Sangwoo's fury once more. With a calm, measured tone, he stated that for a drug user, Baek Sangwoo's body was quite small, a direct and devastating insult that promised an explosive confrontation. A calculating man, our protagonist observed the world with an unnerving precision, always seeking hidden truths. Unknown to many, a secret world of artificial enhancement existed, fueled by potent chemical structures. These substances promised rapid protein synthesis, inducing muscle growth far beyond natural limits. The dream of a perfectly sculpted physique, achieved through unnatural means, was now within reach for many. They offered a shortcut to implanting incredible strength and stamina, granting an unfair advantage. What began as a tool for medical treatment had warped into something else entirely, a dangerous pursuit. A growing number of individuals, desperate for quick gains, sought these illicit advantages for themselves. Though not officially recognized, these performance enhancers were secretly embraced in competitive circles. These potent concoctions were often found in surprisingly small bottles, easily concealed from prying eyes. But every shortcut came with its own heavy price, hidden dangers lurking beneath the surface. Beyond the physical transformations, there were deeper, more volatile changes taking hold of users. Extreme aggression, paranoia, and violent outbursts became common, known ominously as roid rage. Our boy, Baek Sangwoo, was right in the grip of such a fury, his face contorted in pure, unadulterated rage. This was a story about uncovering hidden debts, the cost of artificial power, and the truth behind the rage. He stood before his homeroom teacher, his face contorted in anger, scoffing at the implied accusation. Sangwoo proudly displayed his physique, scoffing at any suggestion that he relied on drug use. The teacher, however, remained calm, his gaze sharp and analytical, observing every subtle reaction. He then revealed details from Sangwoo's physical exam from the previous year, facts our boy couldn't deny. Sangwoo was stunned, realizing the teacher held unexpected, precise information about him. The teacher pointed out the impossibility of gaining nearly 20 kilograms naturally in just 1 year. Our boy's anger simmered, unable to refute the cold facts, but still unwilling to admit the truth. The teacher continued, detailing specific muscle groups, like the deltoids, that showed unnatural development. Sangwoo's frustration grew, trapped by the teacher's precise observations, his anger mounting steadily. Such rapid, localized growth was a clear characteristic of someone using performance-enhancing drugs. The teacher then casually remarked that Sang-woo's personal choices about drug use were his own. He then calmly asked why Sang-woo so vehemently denied what seemed to be obvious truth. Perhaps, he suggested, Sang-woo was truly ashamed of his body's reliance on drugs to achieve its form. This cutting remark struck a nerve, and Sang-woo's face twisted into an enraged snarl. The teacher, unfazed, calmly identified this explosive outburst as classic, undeniable, roid rage. He then critiqued Sang-woo's lack of respect, speaking informally and cursing at his homeroom teacher. The teacher then dropped a bombshell, asking if this aggression was what led him to assault teacher Kim Won-an. Sang-woo's eyes widened in pure shock, realizing the depth of the teacher's alarming knowledge. How could this man know about such a deeply buried secret, a past he thought was hidden? The teacher had merely poked him, confirming his suspicions from Hong A-rim's earlier testimony. Sang-woo's reactions were an open book, betraying his every thought to the observing teacher. Our boy immediately suspected Hong A-rim of betraying his secret, fueling his paranoia. He then wondered if this was just a test, a cruel game from his teacher to provoke a reaction. Unlike previous times, the teacher thought, no elaborate trap was needed to corner the student. He focused on Sang-woo, seeing him as a new piece in his intricate web of collecting debts. There was no need for Sang-woo to speak, his actions had already provided all the answers needed. The teacher then thought Sang-woo's body, for all its size, looked incapable of throwing a real punch. This insult, a final nudge, caused Sang-woo to snap completely, his control finally breaking. He screamed, his rage boiling over, threatening to harm his teacher, abandoning all pretense. His pride wounded, he demanded if he looked like someone to be messed with, someone weak. The teacher calmly reiterated that Sang-woo's crude expression simply showed his true, violent nature. Unable to control himself, Sang-woo lunged forward, ready to strike his homeroom teacher. Suddenly, Kwak Daibo, the gym director, stepped in, blocking the attack with surprising speed. He sternly commanded Sang-woo to stand down, preserving the sanctity of his sacred gym. The teacher, ever composed, apologized for his student's terrible, uncontrollable temper. The director quickly dismissed the incident, eager to smooth things over and avoid further trouble. Sang-woo continued to protest, feeling unjustly accused and restrained, his anger still raw. The director firmly sent Sang-woo home, ending the volatile confrontation for now. Sang-woo grumbled about his ruined workout, still seething with petty anger and frustration. The director warned him not to escalate things, referencing a past incident, like last time. Sang-woo's face showed a flicker of recognition at the mention of last time, a shared secret. The teacher then left the gym, his investigation far from over, his mind already working. Back in his office, the teacher meticulously gathered information on Baek Sang-woo, his new target. He also looked into Kwak Dae-bo, the gym director, noting his extensive bodybuilding background. The director's quick, defensive reaction regarding Sang-woo's drug use raised immediate red flags. There had to be a deeper reason for the director to hide Sang-woo's obvious reliance on drugs. The director's words echoed, the memory of him telling Sang-woo to go home, still fresh. The phrase, "Don't make things bigger like last time," repeated, fueling the teacher's growing suspicions. Later, Sang-woo gathered his friends, eager to show them something important, something illicit. He unzipped the bag, revealing not just his own drug use, but his role as a drug distributor. Just as Sang-woo was making his sales pitch, the teacher appeared silently behind him, his presence chilling. Our protagonist, a stern teacher named Lee Jin-woo, found himself embroiled in a dark mystery involving his student, Baek Sang-woo. Sang-woo stood frozen, caught in the act. He had been distributing illegal drugs right there on school grounds. The teacher's calm demeanor only heightened the tension as he confronted Sang-woo and his two accomplices. The other two students, panicking, quickly denied any involvement, claiming they hadn't bought anything. Ignoring their pleas, our teacher simply told Sang-woo to follow him for a private counseling session. Once inside the counseling room, Sang-woo defensively claimed he had never sold drugs to anyone. The teacher listened, unmoving, as Sang-woo tried to play dumb about the accusations. He watched Sang-woo intently, his gaze unwavering as the student continued his denials. Sang-woo even picked his ear, dismissively saying he hadn't received any money for drug dealing. He then challenged our teacher, asking if a teacher even had the right to investigate such matters and suggesting he just call the cops. Our teacher listened without a word, letting Sang-woo's defiant thoughts run their course. He then made it clear that Sang-woo's drug use or dealing was not his primary concern. Sang-woo, caught off guard by this unexpected turn, could only stammer a confused, "What?" The teacher adjusted his tie, a subtle, deliberate gesture that signaled the true nature of his inquiry. He then revealed several photos of a woman, Kim A-an, with a smiling Sung-woo in the background. Sung-woo stared in shock at the images, questioning what the teacher truly wanted to know. The photos, now laid bare, hinted at a deeper, more personal connection to Kim Won-an. Our teacher's eyes narrowed, reflecting a resolve that promised no easy answers for Sung-woo. He then asked Sung-woo what he had done to Kim Won-an, much to the surprise of Kwak Dae-bo, the gym owner who appeared. Kwak Dae-bo, caught off guard by the late hour visit, asked why the teacher was there. The teacher replied he needed to check something. The teacher looked at Kwak Dae-bo with an unreadable expression, the gym's lights reflecting in his glasses. He then accused Kwak Dae-bo of being the drug supplier, with Sung-woo handling the distribution. Kwak Dae-bo's face twisted in anger, denying the accusation and calling him a drug dealer. The teacher calmly revealed Kwak Dae-bo's past, including his expulsion from the Korea Bodybuilding Association for doping. He continued, detailing how Kwak Dae-bo had been booked for assaulting a pregnant woman in a parking lot. Our teacher finished his list of past crimes, noting Kwak Dae-bo had claimed diminished mental capacity due to drugs in court. He then deduced that based on these incidents, Kwak Dae-bo was likely still using drugs, igniting the gym owner's rage. The teacher explained that Kwak Dae-bo's failing gym and loss of clients made selling drugs a reasonable deduction for making rent. Kwak Dae-bo erupted, calling the teacher a son of a bitch, his patience finally snapping. Consumed by fury, Kwak Dae-bo lunged at the teacher, ready to make him pay for his words. But the teacher was quicker, delivering a precise punch that stopped Kwak Dae-bo's attack cold. Kwak Dae-bo crumpled to the floor, groaning in pain, his aggression quickly subdued. The teacher stood over him, reiterating that he didn't care about the drug dealing but wanted to know something else. Kwak Dae-bo, defeated, warned the teacher not to make things bigger, hinting at a past incident. Sung-woo, back in the counseling room, reacted to the mention of last time, a dark memory surfacing. Our teacher pressed Kwak Dae-bo, asking if last time referred to Sung-woo punching his previous homeroom teacher. Kwak Dae-bo looked confused, stammering as he denied knowing what the teacher was talking about. He clarified that he was referring to Sung-woo beating up another gym member, a messy incident he had to settle. Kwak Dae-bo insisted he was telling the truth about that incident, even claiming to have the settlement agreement. Then, with a terrified look, Kwak Dae-bo began to confess more about the previous homeroom teacher. He revealed that Sung-woo had often taught that female teacher, Kim Won-an, how to work out at the gym. Back in the counseling room, our teacher sat across from Sung-woo, holding the incriminating photos. Sung-woo, still confident, asked if he could go, stating he needed his supplements, believing he was safe at school. Our teacher looked at Sung-woo with an unsettling calm, his eyes betraying a dangerous intent. Sung-woo, growing uneasy, asked, "Huh?" as the teacher's expression grew colder. The teacher then uttered two words, "heart failure," his voice chillingly devoid of emotion. Sung-woo's face twisted in confusion and fear, his confident facade beginning to crack. Without warning, the teacher moved, injecting Sung-woo with a syringe. Sung-woo collapsed, unconscious, the drug taking immediate effect. The teacher stood over the fallen student, his plan unfolding with terrifying precision. A dark, unsettling atmosphere filled the room, foreshadowing the grim events to come. Sung-woo woke up, groggy and disoriented, only to find himself tied to a chair. He struggled against his bonds, his eyes wide with the dawning horror at his predicament. The teacher stood before him, calm and composed, holding another syringe. Sung-woo lashed out, calling the teacher a psycho and demanding to know if a teacher could even do this. The teacher ignored his pleas, calmly preparing the next injection. Sung-woo's eyes were wide with sheer terror. Understanding the gravity of his situation, the teacher explained that what happened next was purely a result of Sung-woo's own choices, his voice chillingly firm. Sung-woo, sweating and panicked, begged to know what the teacher was trying to do to him. The teacher held up the syringe, its contents a sinister, glowing liquid. Sung-woo's breath hitched, recognizing the word estro as the teacher began to speak. The teacher injected Sung-woo again, explaining that the hormone estrogen would shut down his body's male hormone production. Sung-woo screamed for him to stop. Sung-woo writhed, screaming, "Cut it!" As the effects of the injection began to take hold, the teacher delivered his final, chilling revelation. The most prominent effect of the drug would be muscle loss. Baek Sung-woo, a determined young man, pushed his body to its limits, obsessed with becoming stronger. He believed the man had to be strong, that the more sweat he shed, the better. His physique, growing bigger with each session, he craved an even more imposing form. If he didn't want to go back to his old life, he knew he had to keep getting bigger. He felt a desperate urgency. There was no turning back from this path he had chosen. The thought of returning to his past filled him with a cold, absolute dread. He would never allow himself to be that person again, no matter the cost. Suddenly, the scene shifted, and he found himself tied up, a sharp needle approaching his neck. He struggled, his mind racing, trying to comprehend what was happening to him. The needle plunged in, a chilling sensation spreading through his body. He screamed, the pain intense, as the man in glasses calmly continued the injection. The interrogator simply stared, his expression devoid of any warmth or mercy. Our boy, Baek Sang-woo, could only listen as the interrogator began to speak, his voice cold and commanding. Sang-woo remembered her first, the new homeroom teacher, Kim Ian, standing before the class. He hadn't thought much of her then, just another pretty face in the endless cycle of school life. His mind was always on his post-school workout routine, planning how to destroy his posterior chain. For a while, they barely interacted. He spent recess sleeping to aid his muscle recovery. Their first real conversation happened after a significant incident involving another student's lies. The man in glasses listened, his gaze unwavering as Sang-woo recounted the early days. He explained that he wasn't close to Hong A-ryum, the girl who framed the teacher. The interrogator's silence urged him to continue, demanding every detail. Sang-woo took a deep breath, trying to recall the exact sequence of events. It was after the Hong A-ryum incident that he and teacher Kim began to grow closer. During lunch, he would always be alone on the field, performing pull-ups, relishing the feeling of isolating his lats. He was completely focused on his workout, lost in his own world of physical exertion. One day, teacher Kim approached him, curious about his dedication. She had always wanted to talk to him, but never found the right moment until now. They sat together, and she asked him a question that no other teacher ever had. She wanted to know his dream, offering her help if she could. Sang-woo, slightly embarrassed, revealed his dream to be a natural bodybuilder. He explained it was because it was manly and cool, and she found it awesome. She even complimented his physique, saying it really suited him, making him feel proud. The interrogator remained impassive, absorbing every word of Sang-woo's story. Sang-woo hesitated, knowing the next part of his story was far less pleasant. He admitted he had hit her, but insisted there was a reason for it. It happened during PE class, a day he would never forget. He had forgotten his gear that morning and rushed back to the empty classroom to retrieve it. But it wasn't just his gear he was after. He quickly prepared to inject a shot. He could feel the energy rushing back, a surge of power that came from the drug. The classroom doorway revealed her presence. Teacher Kim was standing right there. Her eyes widened in disbelief, her expression a mix of surprise and deep disappointment. He tried to stammer out an explanation, but the syringe in his hand spoke volumes. She knew what it was, a drug, likely steroids, contradicting his dream entirely. Calling his dream a lie, she demanded he hand over the syringe, accusing him of weakness. He tried to justify it, claiming the amount he used was still considered natural in his build. She saw through his excuses, stating that lying to himself was neither manly nor cool. Her words, sharp and direct, pierced through his self-deception, calling him weak. The accusation of weakness echoed in his mind, fueling a sudden, uncontrollable fury. He was hit with a wave of roid rage, his anger completely overwhelming him. Sang-woo paused, the memory of that moment still vivid and unsettling. In that fit of rage, he confessed, he had thrown a punch at teacher Kim. He quickly realized his mistake, immediately apologizing and begging for her forgiveness. Teacher Kim, he claimed, had smiled and forgiven him, and they had gotten along fine afterward. The interrogator found his story peculiar, the pieces not quite fitting together. He pointed out Sang-woo's assumption that he knew about Hong A-ryum framing the teacher. This suggested Sang-woo had prior information, making his entire narrative less credible. He grabbed Sang-woo by the hair, reiterating his demand for the absolute truth. The interrogator held up another syringe, a silent threat for further dishonesty. Sang-woo, confused and increasingly desperate, questioned how he could possibly know if he was lying. He screamed as the syringe plunged into him once more, a fresh wave of agony. Our boy, Baek Sang-woo, insisted he had told everything, his voice filled with desperation. The interrogator simply replied that he didn't know if Sang-woo was lying, but someone else might. He turned his gaze, indicating another presence in the room. The interrogator introduced Eom Ye-jun, a student from class 3-2. Eom Ye-jun stood quietly, observing the scene with a composed demeanor. The interrogator stated his belief that Eom Ye-jun was one of the culprits who drove Kim Ma-in to her death. He then asked Eom Ye-jun to judge Sang-woo's story, demanding to know what was true and what was false. The debt collector, a man known for his ruthless pursuit of justice, stood ready to interrogate a student suspected of driving teacher Kim Mai-nan to her death. He brought the class president, Yeom Ye-jun, to witness the confrontation, hoping he would help discern the truth from the lies. Ye-jun stood quietly, observing the scene, a mix of apprehension and duty etched onto his young face. The debt collector recalled how Ye-jun had once pleaded with him to find the people responsible for teacher Kim Won-un's tragic end. Now, the debt collector looked at Ye-jun with an unwavering gaze, reminding him of that plea and the gravity of the situation. Ye-jun's expression hardened, his eyes reflecting a deep resolve as he silently acknowledged the immense weight of the task. Inside the interrogation room, Baek Sang-woo was tied to a chair, fear evident in his eyes as he faced the debt collector and Ye-jun. The debt collector observed Baek Sang-woo, believing him to be one of the culprits, a sentiment he had presented to the class president. He explained that he had heard various accounts, making it hard to distinguish truth from fabrication, and asked Ye-jun to be the judge. Baek Sang-woo immediately protested, denying any wrongdoing and frantically claiming he had been injected with estrogen. He cried out, demanding that Ye-jun intervene, call the police, and save him from this complete fucking psychopath. Ye-jun remained silent, his gaze fixed on Baek Sang-woo, processing the man's desperate accusations. Baek Sang-woo continued to yell, his voice full of panic, pleading with Ye-jun to call the cops and help him escape. The debt collector simply watched, his eyes narrowed, an unreadable expression on his face as he listened to Baek Sang-woo's outburst. He considered Baek Sang-woo's history, recalling how the student had been careless enough to distribute drugs at school. Despite his sloppiness and involvement with the gym owner, Baek Sang-woo had never been caught, which raised the debt collector's suspicions. He noted that Class 2 rarely had issues, largely thanks to Ye-jun, who always appeared to handle problems before they escalated. The debt collector also remembered how difficult it had been to run a background check on Ye-jun, as every private investigation agency refused. Such refusals usually indicated a dangerous individual, someone whose past was deliberately obscured. He concluded that if Ye-jun refused to speak up about Baek Sang-woo, there was a high probability that Ye-jun himself was a dangerous figure. The debt collector then turned to Ye-jun, asking him to decide whether Baek Sang-woo's story was true or not. Baek Sang-woo visibly sweated, his eyes darting between the two, desperate for Ye-jun's judgment. The debt collector waited, a subtle smirk playing on his lips, confident in the answer he was about to receive. Ye-jun looked at Baek Sang-woo, his voice calm and steady as he declared that most of what Baek Sang-woo had said was, in fact, lies. Baek Sang-woo gasped, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal, unable to comprehend Ye-jun's statement. His face contorted in disbelief, the realization slowly dawning on him that Ye-jun was not on his side. Baek Sang-woo's expression twisted into a grimace of fear and anger, the implications of Ye-jun's words sinking in. The debt collector then offered to reveal what truly happened, promising to expose Baek Sang-woo's deception. Ye-jun nodded, his quiet, "Tell me," indicating his readiness to hear the full, unvarnished truth. The debt collector began his account, detailing Baek Sang-woo's aggressive advances toward teacher Kim Won-un from the very first meeting. Teacher Kim, though flustered by his persistent remarks, always maintained her composure and drew a clear line. Baek Sang-woo, however, remained undeterred, continuing to hit on her. Convinced of his own charm and masculinity, Teacher Kim attempted to brush off his behavior as a mischievous joke, hoping he would eventually understand the boundaries. One day, in the hallway, she gently told him that she preferred manly guys, not cute types like our Sang-woo, thinking they were alone. Her words, however, were not unheard. Another student, Hong A-reum, was passing by and overheard the entire exchange. Hong A-reum, who had been love-bombed by Baek Sang-woo the previous year, seized the opportunity to spread a rumor. She posted a story on social media, implying that Teacher Kim had dumped Baek Sang-woo, causing the rumor to spread quickly. Students, knowing Baek Sang-woo's explosive temper, didn't tease him directly, but secretly started calling him Omega Male behind his back. Baek Sang-woo, unaware of the nickname, continued to drink protein shakes, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Eventually, Baek Sang-woo began treating Teacher Kim as if she didn't exist, completely avoiding her. Teacher Kim, genuinely concerned, approached Ye-jun for advice on how to improve her relationship with the student. She listened intently, writing down every suggestion Ye-jun gave her, showing a profound dedication to her students. Teacher Kim continued her earnest efforts, truly caring for her students and striving to connect with them. Despite her careful and delicate efforts to bridge the gap, The incident happened shortly after, shattering any progress she had made. One day, the PE teacher let class out early, and some students were heading back to their classroom when they heard a commotion. The sound was coming from their classroom, and they rushed to check what was happening inside. They stepped into the room and saw Baek Sung-woo brutally attacking Teacher Kim. Baek Sung-woo punched Teacher Kim, yelling cruel insults about her being weak. Teacher Kim fell to the ground, her face a mask of shock and pain, unable to defend herself. Baek Sung-woo stood over her, his face contorted in a sneer, asking if she now liked manly guys after experiencing his weak fist. Teacher Kim stared up, her eyes wide with terror, completely overwhelmed by the sudden, violent assault. Ye-jun intervened, stopping Baek Sung-woo from continuing his assault on Teacher Kim. Teacher Kim, refusing any help, silently left the classroom, her dignity wounded. Ye-jun finished his account, stating that this was the truth as he knew it, confident that Baek Sung-woo could not object. Baek Sung-woo exploded in rage, demanding to know why Ye-jun was betraying him and exposing everything. Ye-jun remained impassive, offering no explanation for his actions, simply accepting the debt collector's gratitude. The debt collector then told Ye-jun that he could leave, acknowledging that while his suspicions about Baek Sung-woo weren't fully cleared, he had enough circumstantial evidence. He then turned to Baek Sung-woo, informing him that he still had business to settle, before delivering a swift, brutal kick. Baek Sung-woo crumpled to the floor, groaning in pain, the reality of his situation sinking in. He desperately begged Ye-jun for help, reminding him of his earlier plea to find those responsible for Teacher Kim's death. The debt collector paused, looking at Ye-jun, a silent question hanging in the air about his involvement. Ye-jun, his voice barely a whisper, simply asked, "Teacher?" The debt collector clarified that while most of Baek Sung-woo's story was indeed lies, one part held a sliver of truth. Baek Sung-woo, from the floor, confirmed that Teacher Kim had, in fact, forgiven him for his actions. But the debt collector's face hardened, and he calmly stated that he had not forgiven Baek Sung-woo. Baek Sung-woo's eyes widened in horror, understanding the grim fate that now awaited him. The debt collector raised his fist, his voice cold and resolute, declaring that Baek Sung-woo would be beaten to the brink of death. He brought his fist down with crushing force, the punishment beginning in earnest. Baek Sung-woo screamed in agony, forced to endure the brutal onslaught like a man, as the real storm had only just begun. The brutal strikes landed, each one a hammer blow against his weakening body. His vision swam with blood, the world blurring into a painful mess. Above him, the teacher's face remained cold, his fists still stained with the proof of his cruelty. He continued to strike, a methodical, terrifying rhythm that promised only oblivion. Was this truly the end? He wondered if he was actually going to die here. The next kick was coming, and he felt his consciousness slipping away with each passing second. His vision was getting blurry, the edges of his world fading into darkness. Ye-jun watched from the sidelines, his desperate plea a mere whisper in the brutal silence. He couldn't see clearly, but he knew what was happening, his body shaking with a helpless fear. Despite his cries, Sung-woo believed his friend was thinking hard, searching for a way to save him. This brutal scene was the culmination of events set in motion only a few days prior. A few nights ago, the city lights twinkled beneath them, a stark contrast to the darkness that was about to unfold. Sung-woo had been called out here, curious about the sudden late-night summons from his friend. The reason, Ye-jun explained, was their homeroom teacher. It was about the teacher ruining Hong A-ryum's life, a situation that had already spiraled out of control. There was a high chance Sung-woo would be the teacher's next target, a grim prediction. Sung-woo had witnessed Ye-jun using violence against Teacher Kim, a fact that made him vulnerable. He needed to be prepared for when the homeroom teacher inevitably came looking for him. Sung-woo, impressed by his friend's foresight, commented on his calculating mind. His friend often wondered if Ye-jun was the richest student in all of South Korea. Ye-jun grew serious, his hand firm on Sung-woo's shoulder as he gave a crucial instruction. Even if the homeroom teacher came for him, Sung-woo must never, ever tell the truth. Sung-woo, the true alpha male, confidently assured his friend he wouldn't say a single word. Yet here he was now, battered and broken, his earlier bravado replaced by the stark reality of his situation. He really wanted to say everything, to scream for help, but his voice wouldn't even come out. Ye-jun could feel his friend's silent plea, a desperate cry for rescue that pierced through the violence. Teacher Kim Sung-an had not only kidnapped the student but had deliberately brought Ye-jun to the scene. These siblings, the teacher thought, were truly something, amusing him in their own twisted way. Ye-jun was acting flustered, telling him to stop, but he wasn't taking any real action. Even though the teacher had found Sung-woo by following Hong A-ryum, he still suspected Ye Jun. The teacher was deliberately placing Ye Jun in front of him, showcasing this level of brutality as a test. This was a setup, Ye Jun realized, designed to terrify any ordinary student. Ye Jun's reaction was ambiguous, the teacher noted. Anything beyond this was unnecessary. It wouldn't be difficult to make him talk anyway, the teacher mused, his fate sealed. The teacher hadn't dropped his suspicion of Ye Jun, yet he wasn't directly interrogating him either. The problem was Baek Sang-woo. He definitely lacked the mental resilience to withstand the interrogation. So, the homeroom teacher's decision was to release Ye Jun for now and observe his actions. He told Ye Jun he could leave as there was nothing more he could help with today. This was more efficient, he believed, as Baek Sang-woo was already in his hands anyway. Because if he were truly connected to Baek Sang-woo, Ye Jun knew he wouldn't abandon him like this. Furthermore, he reminded Ye Jun he had even shed tears asking him to find the culprit. His earlier plea had been sincere, but he hadn't known it would come to this. What he planned to do with Sang-woo, the teacher said they would have to wait and see. He hadn't even started anything in the first place, he asserted, a chilling promise. And if another perpetrator's name came out of Sang-woo's mouth, he warned, that bastard would realize it too. That the afterlife might be better than the world he was living in. Ye Jun, with a heavy heart, agreed to get going then. Alright, the teacher said, just keep quiet about today in class. He had so many questions. So many things he wanted to understand about the teacher. You'll find out when the time comes, the teacher simply stated, before telling him to go. He would be watching Ye Jun closely, whether he chose to help Sang-woo or not. If he did, that would make Ye Jun one of the culprits as well, the teacher warned, before saying he'd see him at school. As Ye Jun stepped out, a new, unexpected presence made him pause. The man watched the scene with a cold, assessing gaze. He had come to catch that punk Baek Sang-woo, but this was not what he expected. Was it Ye Jun, the scrawny one, who had done this? He was asking if Ye Jun was the one who did that to Sang-woo, because he had to collect money from him. Ye Jun tried to ask who he was, but the man was not in the mood for questions. He simply told Ye Jun to move, his patience clearly at an end. A swift punch connected, sending Ye Jun reeling back from the unexpected blow. Ye Jun grunted, the pain momentarily surprising him. He then demanded to know Ye Jun's relationship with Baek Sang-woo. It seemed he had been asking the wrong guy, his field of vision too narrow before. Ye Jun, recovering quickly, calmly told him to answer the question. For now, Ye Jun said, he was a business partner. Anyone could see it was not Ye Jun who had done this, the man stated, demanding to know why a high school student was beaten. He didn't really care about the details, he declared, as he was taking Baek Sang-woo with him now. The money Sang-woo owed him was not just pocket change, he asserted, making his claim. Ye Jun could not allow that, he stated, explaining there was a hierarchy when it came to debts. To think this man would try to take Sang-woo at such a perfectly timed moment, Ye Jun thought. He was, Ye Jun declared, the senior creditor. Kim Sang-an, a man caught between two worlds, found himself confronting a formidable debt collector in a tense standoff. Baek Sang-woo, tied and beaten, lay helplessly on the ground while Ye Jun, visibly shaken, watched the confrontation unfold. Nam Woo-cheol, a man with a casual demeanor and a cigarette dangling from his lips, declared himself the senior creditor, setting his own rules. Our protagonist, Kim Sang-an, listened intently, his expression unreadable, betraying no hint of his thoughts. Woo-cheol smirked, a dangerous confidence in his eyes, enjoying the power he held over the situation. He casually removed the cigarette from his mouth, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes about his self-assured arrogance. Then, Woo-cheol clenched his fist, a silent promise of the force he was about to unleash upon anyone who dared to challenge him. He lunged forward, a powerful punch aimed directly at Sang-an, expecting to land a decisive blow. Woo-cheol's eyes widened in surprise as his attack was met, not with resistance, but an unexpected deflection. Sang-an, with incredible speed and composure, had effortlessly blocked the punch using only his shoulder, barely flinching. Woo-cheol was left stunned, processing the sheer reaction time and skill that Sang-an had just displayed. Sang-an, seizing the moment, fixed Woo-cheol with a piercing gaze, demanding to know the true reason behind his pursuit of Baek Sang-woo. Before Woo-cheol could fully recover, Sang-an retaliated with a brutal punch that sent him reeling, a sharp crack echoing through the air. Our hero's expression remained grim, convinced that there was more to the situation than a simple debt collection. He harbored a strong suspicion that some deeper, hidden agenda was at play in Woo-cheol's actions. Wu Chiu, despite the clear pain, simply chuckled, reiterating his earlier statement that he was only there to collect the payment. Another fierce punch from Sung An landed squarely, hitting Wu Chiu with bone-jarring impact, yet the man still held his ground. Wu Chiu, wiping a trickle of blood from his mouth, grinned, admitting that he hadn't experienced such a satisfying punch in quite some time. Deciding to be more formal, Wu Chiu declared that he should at least introduce himself before they continued their exchange. He then stated his full name, Nam Wu Chiu, with a theatrical flourish, as if presenting himself to an audience. Wu Chiu then explained his past, mentioning he used to operate a small pharmacy in Gangwon province, but now sought bigger stakes in Seoul. He moved swiftly, blocking Sung An's next attack with a swift, practiced motion, demonstrating his own fighting prowess. Wu Chiu then launched a powerful kick, aiming to knock Sung An off balance and assert his dominance in the fight. He clarified his connection to the injured man, revealing Baek Sung-woo was a wholesaler who dealt in his drugs. Wu Chiu concluded his explanation by stating that today was the due date for Sung-woo's monthly payment. Having finished his own introduction, Wu Chiu turned the question back to Sung An, eager to learn about his opponent. Wu Chiu watched, amazed, as Sung An absorbed his previous blow without showing any signs of weakening. Sung An then calmly introduced himself as Kim Sung An, his voice steady despite the ongoing tension. He then stated his profession, identifying himself simply as a teacher, a declaration that immediately drew Wu Chiu's surprise. Wu Chiu repeated the word teacher with a disbelieving tone, clearly finding it hard to reconcile with Sung An's fighting ability. He scoffed, asking if the weakling, Baek Sung-woo, was also Sung An's student, further highlighting his skepticism. Wu Chiu then provocatively asked if teachers still resorted to beating up their students in this day and age. Sung An brushed off the question as irrelevant, instead pressing Wu Chiu on how he pinpointed their precise location. He considered the possibility that Ye Jun, the only other person present, might have inadvertently shared their whereabouts. Yet, Sung An observed that Wu Chiu showed no signs of recognizing Ye Jun, making that theory seem less likely. Wu Chiu, with a casual shrug, disclosed his method. He had simply used a common location sharing application. He held up his phone, displaying the app with a map showing their current position, making his explanation undeniable. Wu Chiu then mocked Sung An, implying that a teacher should know about such widely used apps among younger generations. He further clarified that while the app was designed for friends or couples, it proved incredibly useful for tracking down debtors. Sung An processed the information, realizing the location aspect now made sense, but a lingering sense of unease settled over him. He felt as though he had unknowingly stepped onto a stage carefully constructed by someone else, a pawn in a larger game. Wu Chiu, oblivious to Sung An's growing suspicions, stated that he believed he had answered enough questions. Then, Wu Chiu turned the tables, questioning whether Sung An was truly a teacher, his tone laced with doubt. He claimed an innate ability to discern people's true nature, especially those who lived a life similar to his own. Wu Chiu elaborated, explaining that Sung An possessed the distinct eyes of someone walking at the bottom, a look he recognized well. To avoid a protracted, potentially fatal confrontation, Wu Chiu proposed a negotiation, suggesting they find a less destructive path. He then directly asked Sung An if he wished to withdraw from the fight and simply walk away from the situation. Sung An, after a moment of intense deliberation, conceded, admitting that backing out seemed like the wiser choice. He acknowledged that continuing the battle would likely cost him dearly, perhaps an arm or a leg, a price he was unwilling to pay. Despite his decision to retreat, a part of him still wrestled with the implications of leaving Baek Sung-woo behind. Wu Chiu, however, quickly asserted his dominance, making it clear that Sung An wasn't backing out, he was being dismissed. As the words left Wu Chiu's mouth, a large group of men, armed with various makeshift weapons, emerged from the shadows. Sung An's gaze swept over the approaching figures, realizing the sheer number of people was far too great for merely apprehending Baek Sung-woo. He instantly understood that this entire operation had been meticulously planned, explicitly prepared for a confrontation. Sung An quickly counted them, his mind racing, confirming the alarming number of 42 opponents arrayed against him. The true complication, however, was Ye Jun, who was now being roughly held by two of Wu Chiu's men. Sung An knew he couldn't possibly defend Ye Jun against such overwhelming numbers without incurring significant harm himself. Ye Jun, though still a source of suspicion, was, for the moment, simply Kim Sang-an's student under his protection. Sung An reasoned that if he accepted help from someone without debt and caused them harm, it would be equivalent to incurring a new debt himself. With a heavy heart, Sang-an made the difficult decision to surrender Baek Sang-woo to Woo-cheol's crew. He made one final plea, asking Woo-cheol to spare Sang-woo's life, hoping for a shred of decency from the man. Woo-cheol simply replied that he, too, had a debt to collect from Sang-woo, implying a different kind of retribution. He then stated his intention to take Ye-jun as well, arguing that the student was unrelated to the debt and therefore fair game. Woo-cheol attempted to reassure Sang-an, claiming they weren't in the business of committing murder in this day and age. He added that he had no particular interest in Ye-jun, giving Sang-an permission to handle the student as he pleased. Woo-cheol then curtly dismissed Sang-an, signaling that their encounter had reached its conclusion. He offered a casual, almost playful, suggestion for Sang-an to relax his tense expression. Woo-cheol, acknowledging his skimming of Baek Sang-woo, offered to buy Sang-an a drink the next time their paths crossed. Sang-an, his voice devoid of emotion, simply replied with a terse, "Sure," accepting the terms of their uneasy truce. Woo-cheol offered a final, parting remark, a seemingly innocuous, "See you again," before turning to leave. Sang-an watched him go, a profound sense of foreboding settling in his gut, the encounter leaving a bitter taste. Meanwhile, President Eum sat in a luxurious room, reflecting on the recent events with a smug satisfaction. He mused over Sang-an's surprisingly quiet departure, expecting more resistance from the determined man. Eum concluded that Sang-an must have found their elaborate story utterly convincing, explaining his easy retreat. He then congratulated Woo-cheol, attributing their success to their impeccable acting, particularly Woo-cheol's performance. Eum specifically praised Woo-cheol's loser act, calling it truly despicable, a perfect deception that fooled their opponent. He boasted that Sang-an would never suspect that they were the ones who had orchestrated the entire setup. Eum likened their meticulously executed plan to a documentary, so perfectly scripted it felt like reality. A young man with blue hair endured constant beatings, a harsh reality that fueled a deep yearning within him. He had nothing to his name but contempt from others, and everyone around him made sure he never forgot it. He was too weak to fight back, a constant target for those who found joy in his suffering, his pleas for release ignored. This cycle of powerlessness sparked a desperate resolve. He wanted nothing more than to break free from being perpetually looked down upon. He pushed his body to its limits, but his natural strength wasn't enough to achieve the transformation he craved. The frustration was palpable, etched onto his face as he stared at his reflection, unwilling to accept his current state. There had to be another way, a faster path to the power he so desperately needed to gain respect. So, he started pinning gear, believing it was the only way anyone could truly gain muscle easily and quickly. Despite his efforts, the path he chose led him to a dark forest, bound and helpless once more, a grim echo of his past. It was a scene that stirred a deep resolve within the debt collector, who now faced a large group of enforcers. Our debt collector had once been like this, young man, utterly powerless, and he knew what it felt like to be on the receiving end of such cruelty. He had wanted to become a man who could protect himself, a man capable of making a stand against injustice. The blonde leader, Shin Jong-woo, watched the debt collector with growing unease, sensing something far beyond ordinary. He had been warned about this man, but the sheer intensity radiating from him was far more unsettling than expected. Shin Jong-woo couldn't comprehend the speed and precision with which the debt collector had already dispatched some of his men. The enforcer had believed he was facing an ordinary man, but this situation proved to be far more dangerous. The debt collector, however, was the one truly curious about Shin Jong-woo's motives and who had sent him. He wanted to know the real reason for targeting Baek Sang-woo, the man tied up, beyond just a simple debt. He also demanded to know who had given the order to take Baek Sang-woo in such a brutal manner. Shin Jong-woo desperately wanted to answer, but he knew that speaking a single word would seal the fate of everyone with him. He understood the grave implications of betraying his superiors, a silent fear that gripped him and his crew. The air was thick with unspoken threats, a silent standoff between unwavering resolve and desperate loyalty. He held his ground, determined not to crack under pressure, no matter how much the debt collector tried to provoke him. Shin Jong-woo boasted that the debt collector couldn't win against numbers, especially when alone. The debt collector calmly agreed with that assessment, a chillingly understated response that unnerved his opponent. But then, his own forces emerged from the darkness, revealing that he was never truly alone to begin with. The enforcers watched in disbelief as more figures materialized, shifting the balance of power entirely. The debt collector declared it blasphemous to dare attempt to gang up on someone like him, a god in their midst. Shin Jong-woo, A member of Chunhong Capital Debt Collection Team 1 stepped forward, ready to face the challenge. He challenged the debt collector, urging him to come forward if he truly wished to die that badly. But the debt collector moved with blinding speed, striking Shin Jong-woo before he could even react. The enforcer was utterly stunned, realizing this man was far from ordinary, a true monster in human form. The debt collector continued his assault, his movements fluid and devastating, each punch landing with incredible force. He was even fiercer than before, a whirlwind of controlled violence, leaving no room for his opponent to recover. Shin Jong-woo tried to block, but the punches broke through his defenses, overwhelming him completely. He was taking a beating, but his resolve remained, convinced that his opponent's punches wouldn't truly work on him. The debt collector's eyes narrowed, aware of Shin Jong-woo's stubbornness, but he knew exactly how to dismantle it. He delivered a powerful kick, asserting that Shin Jong-woo's punches were useless from such a low position. With another swift, powerful strike, he sent Shin Jong-woo flying through the air, completely disoriented. Shin Jong-woo crashed to the ground, groaning in pain, the impact rattling him to his core. The debt collector had simply been avoiding the fight earlier, allowing Shin Jong-woo to underestimate his true power. While he dealt with the leader, his subordinates systematically took down the rest of the enforcers. Battered and bruised, Shin Jong-woo desperately called out to his men, urging them to help him. He couldn't believe his eyes. His entire team, over 40 men, had been taken down with terrifying efficiency. The sight was a stark reminder that these weren't just ordinary lackeys, they were formidable opponents. The debt collector's men stood tall amidst the fallen, their faces grim but victorious, having completed their task. The debt collector once again asked Shin Jong-woo to answer his 2 questions, offering to let him go if he complied. Shin Jong-woo remained silent, understanding that his refusal was not an act of defiance but a desperate bid for his subordinates' lives. He was caught between a rock and a hard place, knowing that any information revealed would bring severe repercussions. The debt collector saw through his excuses, recognizing it as a grandiose way of saying he couldn't answer. He firmly stated that no matter the provocation, he would never open his mouth, protecting his organization. If he didn't want to answer, then he didn't have to. The debt collector would simply find out the information himself. The kick was a clear message, a chilling demonstration of the consequences of his continued silence. The subordinates watched their leader being brutalized, a mix of fear and helpless loyalty on their faces. They knew their leader had a bigger plan in mind, realizing that his actions were always calculated and precise. He instructed his men to release the big guy and his subordinates, but made it clear he was taking Baek Sang-woo. Baek Sang-woo, still tied, could only muffle sounds of fear, realizing his fate was now entirely in this man's hands. He was moved to a different location, still bound and gagged, the fear mounting with every passing moment. The debt collector began to explain the concept of prepaid interest in loan sharking, a chilling prelude to his intentions. He elaborated on how interest is deducted upfront, meaning the actual amount received is far less than the principal. This manipulative structure meant the true interest rate became much higher than what was stated in the contract. Baek Sang-woo could only muffle his screams, understanding the terrifying implications of what was being said. The debt collector declared that he would now take prepaid interest from Baek Sang-woo, a chilling twist on the financial term. Baek Sang-woo's eyes widened in sheer horror, realizing the true nature of the interest he was about to pay. One of the men expressed concern, questioning if they were really going to do something so dangerous, hinting at prison. The other man casually dismissed his worries, calling it a standard castration surgery, a horrifyingly calm response. With a finally chilling statement, the debt collector announced they would skip the anesthesia, leaving Baek Sang-woo in pure, unadulterated terror. Baek Sang-woo's life was on the line, but the men preparing for the operation seemed less than professional, their faces etched with a grim kind of surprise. He thrashed against his restraints, muffled cries escaping his gagged mouth, his body convulsing as the reality of his situation set in. The cold glint of the scalpels in their hands was a chilling promise, as the men prepared to carry out their gruesome task. A nervous intern admitted to a critical oversight, leaving a seasoned criminal unimpressed and a sense of dread hanging heavy in the air. Instead of medical supplies, the chef produced a bottle of liquor, a bizarre and terrifying signal that this was no ordinary procedure. The room felt less like a hospital and more like a butcher's shop, as the men leaned over his helpless form, ready to begin the horrific act. Through bloody tears, he cried out for his parents, his muffled screams filled with the agony of a life about to be unjustly cut short. In his mind, he saw a fleeting image of his parents, smiling, holding a grandchild he would now never be able to give them. One of the men even mused on the practicalities, questioning if such a cruel punishment was truly necessary for a man already so broken. His heart pounded like a drum against his ribs, a frantic rhythm of fear and despair as the moment of irreversible pain drew near. Then a new presence entered the room, a sharp, imposing figure in a suit, his gaze fixed on the bound man. Team leader Kim Sang-an, the man who had been hunting him, offered a final, unexpected reprieve, a chance to speak and perhaps save himself. He coughed, struggling for air, the words catching in his throat as he tried to grasp the lifeline thrown his way. The team leader's expression remained unreadable, but his intent was clear, answers were expected, and quickly. A firm hand pressed against his head, a silent warning that time was running out and the consequences of silence would be severe. Gasping for breath, his bruised face a mask of terror, he knew he had to talk, his heart still hammering with primal fear. Later, in a different setting, Ye-jun reflected on the previous night's events, his expression thoughtful and grim. He admitted his misjudgment of Sang-an's strength, acknowledging the unexpected challenges they had faced. The loss of their asset, Sang-woo, was a setback, but he took responsibility for underestimating their target. A new concern began to gnaw at him, the possibility that Sang-woo might reveal something he shouldn't. He sought reassurance that had been handled, a subtle nod to the dark deeds they had already committed. Meanwhile, Sang-woo's body began to betray him, his breathing growing ragged, a strange sensation spreading through his limbs. Back in the improvised operating room, the men watched as Sang-woo's condition rapidly deteriorated, his labored breaths echoing loudly. Ye-jun, however, remained pragmatic, issuing an order to move him to a hospital. He couldn't afford for Sang-woo to die just yet. The unconscious man was now a ticking clock, his survival crucial for the information he possessed. They discussed Sang-woo's history as an extreme steroid user, a factor that complicated his current medical state. He then revealed a chilling detail. The teacher had also injected him with estrogen, further destabilizing his body. With a chilling smile, he posed a hypothetical, asking if a central nervous system depressant would be fatal in such a compromised state. He knew the answer, of course, the question itself a testament to his meticulous planning and ruthless efficiency. It was then that the other man confirmed he had, indeed, injected Sang-woo with the drug while he was unconscious. On a rooftop overlooking the city, Ye-jun reflected on his actions, acknowledging that his preparations always yielded results. He noted the temporary diversion of suspicion and the successful silencing of Sang-woo, a testament to his foresight. His only regret, he mused, was not witnessing Sang-an's face when his target of revenge had been so cleverly taken from him. Back at the hospital, Kim Sang-an received news of Sang-woo's survival, a small beep from the machines confirming he was still clinging to life. The hospital staff attributed Sang-woo's critical condition to drug abuse, a complex cocktail of substances requiring extensive testing. They also explained the difficulty of identifying specific drugs in a regular hospital, highlighting the elaborate nature of his poisoning. The team leader's gaze sharpened, a sense of unease beginning to settle over him. Something felt off, a piece of the puzzle refusing to fit into place, sparking a deep suspicion within him. He considered Sang-woo's history, knowing that even heavy drug users typically show warning signs before such a sudden collapse. Furthermore, Sang-woo had learned drug use from a professional, and there were no prior hospital records of side effects. The pieces clicked into place, revealing a disturbing pattern that pointed to deliberate interference. Someone had dared to touch his debtor, Baek Sang-woo, an act of defiance that ignited a quiet fury within him. Whoever was responsible, he vowed, would deeply regret their actions, a cold promise hanging heavy in the air. Back in his office, he fed his goldfish, the small, deliberate action masking a simmering rage beneath his calm exterior. He felt a profound hunger for retribution, an urge to tear apart anyone who stood in his way. The tranquil fish tank was a stark contrast to the storm brewing within him, his eyes reflecting a chilling resolve. His focus was absolute, his mind already calculating the next move in this dangerous game. The depths of his determination were clear in his unblinking gaze, promising swift and brutal consequences. He walked through the dimly lit alley, his footsteps echoing with a quiet power, a man on a mission. His mind raced, piecing together the events that had led to this escalating conflict. He knew this interference was far from a simple schoolyard dispute. It was a deeper, more sinister plot. He recalled the past incidents, realizing this wasn't the first time he had encountered such high-level manipulation. Even the previous confrontation with Park Dae-jeon had hinted at forces beyond what he initially perceived. He remembered Nam Woo Cheol's words, realizing the man had been acting under someone else's powerful influence. There was a hidden hand, he concluded, a powerful entity trying to obscure the truth surrounding Kim Won-en. He thought of Kim Won, her silent silhouette, a constant reminder of the unanswered questions that haunted him. What truly happened to her, and why did she need that substantial loan in the first place? In a desolate alley, a small coin spun and fell, its soft clink breaking the heavy silence. He watched it settle, then looked up as a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, a new player stepping onto the stage. With a steady gaze, he awaited the stranger's move, his mind already preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The figure broke the silence, remarking on the team leader's quiet demeanor, a subtle taunt. Then, a knowing smile spread across the stranger's face, a hint of the power and information he possessed. The words that followed struck Kim Sung-an, a revelation that pierced through his carefully constructed defenses. The stranger claimed to know the very reason Kim Ayan had borrowed 10 million won, a secret that could unravel everything. Our protagonist, a man driven by a profound loss, found himself cornered by a figure who seemed to know too much about his deceased sister. The hooded figure, Yu Jong, taunted him, asking if he wasn't curious about his identity and the secrets he held. He then dropped a bombshell, revealing he knew the reason teacher Kim Won-an had borrowed 10 million won. This revelation was meant to pique our protagonist's interest, a calculated move to draw him into the unfolding drama. Yu Jeon pressed, a smirk hidden beneath his hood, wondering if the protagonist's stoic resolve was finally wavering. Yet, our protagonist remained unmoved, his expression betraying no hint of the turmoil brewing within him. Yu Jeon, frustrated by the lack of reaction, accused him of wasting time by testing his patience. He then mocked the protagonist, reminding him of his failure to get information from the notorious Baek Sang-woo. Our protagonist's gaze sharpened, a silent acknowledgement of the accusation, but also a growing irritation. Suddenly, Yu Gyeon launched a swift kick, a clear sign that his patience had worn thin and the real test was about to begin. Our protagonist moved with surprising speed, intercepting the attack with a practiced ease that belied his calm demeanor. Yu Gyeon's eyes widened slightly, clearly surprised by the protagonist's skill, but he quickly recovered his composure. A pen, a simple tool, became a weapon in the protagonist's hand, flicking with lethal precision. He reiterated his earlier warning, reminding Yu Jeon to cease his pointless provocations. With a sudden burst of power, our protagonist delivered a forceful punch, sending Yu Jeon reeling back. The impact sent Yu Jeon flying through the air, his body momentarily suspended before crashing down. Yu Jeon had only been trying to assess the protagonist's capabilities to see if he could handle the true threat. Our protagonist, now standing over the fallen student, questioned the identity of this mysterious him. Yu Jeon, still smiling despite the blow, mocked the protagonist's lack of understanding about the situation. The protagonist's face remained impassive, but a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. He quickly moved to pin Yu Jeon, securing his leg to prevent any further surprise attacks. Our protagonist lifted Yu Jeon effortlessly, a display of raw strength that left the student stunned. Yu Jeon was astonished, questioning how the protagonist could halt his momentum with such brute force. A wave of genuine shock washed over Yu Jeon's face as he truly grasped the protagonist's formidable power. Our protagonist slammed Yu Jeon to the ground, ending the impromptu fight with a decisive move. The battle was over, and our protagonist turned to walk away, leaving Yu Jeon sprawled on the pavement. Yu Jeon let out a pained groan, the impact of the fall reverberating through his body. His earlier smirk was gone, replaced by a grimace of pain and a hint of respect for his opponent. Our protagonist stood over him, demanding answers, his patience worn thin. Despite his defeat, Yu Jeon's grin returned, still attempting to play his mind games. But our protagonist had already seen through the act, his expression conveying his newfound understanding. Yu Jeon's eyes widened in disbelief, realizing his disguise had been penetrated. Our protagonist began to list precise details about Yu Jeon, demonstrating his meticulous observation skills. He then described Yu Jeon's public persona, contrasting it with his current hidden identity. Our protagonist recounted Yu Jeon's past as a talented baseball pitcher, a detail few would know. He then revealed the pivotal moment of Yu Jeon's life, the injury that forced his transfer to Seoul Bit High. Our protagonist connected the dots, explaining how Yu Jeon's reference to his sister as teacher narrowed down his identity. Yu Jeon, defeated and exposed, laughed at his own failed attempt to play the villain. Our protagonist, however, was not amused, pressing his foot down on Yu Jeon, demanding the truth. He made it clear he would not tolerate further games. his patience exhausted by the students' antics. Yu Jion, still trying to manipulate, claimed his true intention was to offer help. Our protagonist dismissed the claim, his experience telling him otherwise. He pointed out the inconsistency between Yu Jion's words and his aggressive actions. Yu Jion offered a half-hearted apology, admitting his initial attack was merely a test. Our protagonist pulled him closer, wanting to know the real purpose behind the student's dangerous games. Yu Jion insisted he needed to verify the protagonist's strength before revealing the full story. He then revealed the critical piece of information. Someone else was responsible for teacher Kim Won-en's debt. Our protagonist, now fully invested, demanded to know every detail. He soon arrived at an old, abandoned building, the location Yu Jion had pointed him towards. The building had been shut down for years, its desolate appearance hinting at a forgotten past. He found it odd that such a prime commercial location would remain empty for so long. The anomaly only deepened his suspicion, making him question the true nature of this abandoned place. He paused before a faded sign for a PC cafe, the implications of Yu Jion's story weighing heavily on him. The idea of an active internet cafe operating within a derelict structure seemed almost impossible. He lit a cigarette, a moment of reflection before stepping into the unknown. Even with the new information, a deep mistrust of Yu Jion lingered in his mind. Yu Jion had anticipated his skepticism, knowing the protagonist would suspect the trap. Still, Yu Jion had urged him to see the truth with his own eyes, to confront the reality directly. The thought of his sister, teacher Kim Won-en, and her struggles fueled his determination. He realized the full extent of his sister's sacrifice, that she had gone into debt to save him. The scene was grim, a chilling tableau of individuals lost to their own struggles. The people inside were disheveled and listless, their vacant stares fixed on the monitors. Rows of monitors displayed multiple game clients, revealing the true nature of this clandestine operation. This was no ordinary internet cafe, it was a workshop, a place of silent, relentless labor. As he surveyed the room, a young girl, Ga Hye-rim, emerged from the shadows, her voice chillingly calm. She offered him blood money, a term that sent a shiver down his spine, hinting at a darker truth. Ga Hye-rim offered a staggering 1 billion won, her smile revealing a sinister glee. Her innocent demeanor belied a cold calculation, an offer that would test the very limits of his resolve. This chapter plunged into a new depth of the tangled web of debts and revenge, hinting at the true cost of settling scores. Yu Jion, sitting weary on the cold ground, began to explain the truth behind the game workshop he had been trapped in, his voice heavy with resignation. He revealed that Ga Hye-rim, the one who ran this supposed workshop, held a dark secret, exploiting those in desperate need of money. Kim sang and listened intently, his expression unwavering as the grim reality of Yu Jion's situation unfolded before him. Yu Jion confessed that the workshop was, in fact, a forced labor camp, a stark prison for those entangled in Hye-rim's financial schemes. Inside, other tired souls sat hunched over keyboards, their faces mirroring Yu Jion's exhaustion, bound by invisible chains of debt. He recounted how his former teacher, Kim I-ain, had tragically borrowed money from Hye-rim to pay his ransom, a sacrifice that ultimately led to her demise. Ga Hye-rim, the calculating student, offered a staggering sum to silence any thoughts of vengeance, believing money could buy peace. She stood before Kim Sang-an, confidently proposing 1 billion won as compensation, an exceptional offer even by his demanding standards. Our protagonist, Kim Sang-an, absorbed the information, his mind already spinning with possibilities that lay beyond simple monetary gain. The cold hard cash was meant to stop his revenge, but the true cost of Kim Won-en's life, and the blood money offered, was still being weighed. Hye-rim watched him carefully, her composure hinting at the power she believed she held over anyone trapped in debt. She even tried to shift blame, asserting that Kim I-ain's death was a self-inflicted wound, a consequence of her own foolish choices. Kim Sang-an, however, was not easily swayed, his gaze piercing as he questioned her sudden willingness to confess everything. Hye-rim smiled thinly, explaining that she had changed her approach, realizing he was different from the naive teacher she had manipulated before. She considered him a smart person, someone who could be reasoned with, unlike Kim I, whom she deemed a fool beyond saving. He listened, a subtle shift in his eyes betraying a deeper understanding of Hye-rim's manipulative nature and her contempt for the weak. Her glowing red glasses reflected a cruel amusement as she spoke of Kim Won-en's attempts to help others, calling them utterly pointless. She mocked Kim I-ain's sincerity, her smile unwavering as she recounted the teacher's misguided efforts to reform rebellious students. The teacher, Kim Ei-ain had tried to reform even the slyest of students, Hong A-room, with genuine care and unwavering patience. She had approached a low IQ meathead like Baek Sang-woo with pure sincerity, an act Hiram found utterly laughable. Hiram's eyes closed in a seemingly innocent smile, but her words dripped with scorn as she continued to belittle the deceased teacher, Kim Sang, and remained silent, his expression unreadable, letting her reveal the full extent of her callous worldview. She then revealed that Kim My-ain had even taken on debt from a loan shark just to get Yoo-jeon out of the forced labor camp. The teacher had walked into a financial abyss of her own accord, all for the sake of one student she had taught for merely a year. Kim sang and loomed over her, his presence intimidating, as Hiram nervously wondered if she had been too harsh in front of the teacher's family. She looked up, a hint of fear in her eyes, realizing that her casual cruelty might have gone too far even for a seasoned manipulator like herself. His unwavering gaze conveyed a silent judgment, making her question her own assessment of his character and intentions. Hiram's worried glance suggested she was now trying to gauge if he was someone who could truly be bought off, unlike the teacher. Yoo-jeon, still speaking to Kim Sang-an, explained that Ga-hirim's main business was indeed a game workshop, but it was merely a facade. He elaborated that the people toiling there were not employees but debtors, trapped by the small loans Hiram had given them. He himself had borrowed 500,000 won for microtransactions in a game, a debt that had spiraled out of control after an injury ended his baseball career. Kim Sang-an cut him off, stating that he cared little for Yoo-jeon's personal circumstances, only for the true nature of the workshop. He walked away, leaving Yoo-jeon startled, telling him to keep his phone close as he might call if he needed anything. Yoo-jeon called out, his voice laced with urgency, desperate to warn Kim Sang-an about the dangers hidden within that place. But our protagonist kept walking, his steps resolute, leaving Yoo-jeon to wonder what fate awaited him. Yoo-jeon could only watch him go, a sense of helplessness washing over him, knowing the peril that Kim Sang-an was walking into. He put a hand to his face, the weight of his own debt and the teacher's sacrifice pressing down on him. Kim Sang-an, however, marched forward with an unwavering resolve, his mind already calculating the next moves in his intricate plan. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, reflected a deep understanding of the situation, showing he was far more capable than Hiram assumed. He had impressed her case, emphasizing that a loan shark like him should be quick with calculations and pragmatic, valuing money above all else. He listened, his expression giving away nothing, allowing her to continue revealing her cynical worldview. Her confident smile suggested she believed her offer was irresistible, a foolproof way to end his quest for revenge. She pointed out the numerous small-time debtors like this man, who owed less than 2 million won, throwing their lives away for petty sums. Hiram then reiterated her offer, noting that 1 billion won was 100 times the price of Kim Ayan's life, a sum she thought unrefusable. Kim sang, and remained silent, his gaze fixed on her, contemplating the true value of such an offer and what it truly meant. Her eyes, however, seemed to betray a subtle unease, perhaps sensing that her logic wasn't having the intended effect. His eye narrowed, considering the 1 billion won and the sincerity of her proposal, but his thoughts were far from what she expected. Meanwhile, Yeom Ye-jun, who had lured the homeroom teacher to the game workshop, sat waiting, a worried look on his face. He had met with the teacher, and according to his script, the teacher should now be meeting with Ga-hirim. Ye-jun conversed with a colleague, confirming that everything was going according to their initial plan so far. He voiced his doubts, wondering if the teacher would truly give up his revenge for money, given his suspicious and determined nature. He concluded that it didn't matter if the teacher believed Hiram's confession or not. The important thing was that he moved according to their will. Ye-jun strode forward, explaining that Hiram's deal was merely bait, a distraction to ensure the teacher rejected her offer. He sat down, further elaborating that the teacher rejecting the deal was precisely what they wanted to happen. His colleague looked surprised, not fully grasping the intricate layers of Ye-jun's deceptive strategy. Ye-jun confidently stated that given the teacher's past actions, he would definitely refuse the deal, likely resorting to violence instead. He then revealed that Hiram's building, though appearing to be just a game workshop on the second floor, housed something far more dangerous. The third and fourth floors were occupied by a loan shark company, which provided security to the workshop in exchange for cheap rent. Ye-jun closed his eyes, picturing the inevitable clash. If the teacher acted as he always did, he would certainly run into the loan shark organization. His sinister smile confirmed his true intention, to orchestrate a violent confrontation between the teacher and the powerful loan shark company. Ye-jun looked on, surprised by the full scale of the organization within the building, realizing it was more than just simple security. He clenched his fist, frustrated that he still hadn't earned the full trust of his superior Kim Sung-an, despite his meticulous planning. Suddenly, his phone vibrated with an incoming call from Ga Hairim, signaling that her meeting with the teacher had concluded. His eyes widened slightly, a subtle hint of anticipation and surprise at the timing of the call. Yejun answered, his voice firm, ready to hear the report of the teacher's expected refusal and the subsequent chaos. Ga Hairim, on the other end, looked smug, believing she had successfully bought off the vengeful teacher. Yejun, with a knowing smirk, asked about the situation, inquiring about the scale of the damage he expected the teacher to have caused. But Hairim's voice was filled with utter confusion, asking what he meant by clashed or damage. She looked around the game workshop, utterly bewildered, confirming that absolutely nothing like that had happened. Yejun's eye twitched, his confusion growing as Hairim reported the complete opposite of what he had meticulously planned. He stood up abruptly, his mind reeling, unable to comprehend how his carefully constructed trap had failed so spectacularly. His bewildered expression showed the depth of his shock. The teacher had accepted the 1 billion won as blood money for Kim In. Far from the expected violence, the teacher had given up on his revenge, leaving Eom Yejun completely dumbfounded. Eom Yejun, now frustrated and confused, could only utter Kim Sang-an's name, wondering what his superior was truly planning. Kim Sang-an, however, stood alone, his eyes glowing with an enigmatic resolve, his true intentions still a mystery, silently orchestrating a game far beyond anyone's understanding. Kim burst and had always believed a brother's solemn duty was to protect his younger sister, no matter the cost or danger. He would rush home, his breath coming in ragged gasps, whenever he sensed she might be in trouble. That conviction had driven him for as long as he could remember, propelling him forward through the darkest alleys and most desperate situations. One evening, he arrived back to find his sister, Sung-an, already waiting for him, her face etched with a mix of worry and relief at his unexpected appearance. Her voice carried a frantic edge as she questioned his late return, her mind immediately jumping to the worst possible scenarios for his delay. He calmly explained that he had encountered a puppy being bullied by some mean kids in the neighborhood and had intervened, taking a few scrapes in the process. Sung-an held the small, fluffy puppy protectively in her arms, her eyes wide with a mix of concern and understanding for her brother's actions. She immediately noticed the fresh cuts and bruises on his face, her worry for him overriding any lingering frustration about his tardiness. The puppy, seemingly oblivious to the drama, looked up with innocent eyes, a small, trusting creature at the heart of their family's gentle chaos. Sang-an, despite her tender age, would often try to reassure him, insisting that she wasn't nearly as fragile as he might have thought. He carried the memory of her constant bright smile through every challenge, a beacon that always seemed to light his way, even when their world felt dark. Her cheerful demeanor had been unwavering, even during the terrifying night they were forced to flee from relentless loan sharks, seeking refuge in the shadows. Now, the scars on his back told a different story, a testament to battles fought far beyond what his younger self could have imagined, the cost of his unwavering protection. He often found himself reflecting on those past moments, the weight of a hidden truth pressing down on him, a truth he once perceived differently. There had to be something more to her constant smiles, a deeper layer beneath the surface that he had unknowingly overlooked all those years ago. The echoes of his past mingled with the pressing realities of the present, shaping the path he now walked. Across town, a young woman named Ga Hairim was immersed in a game, smoothly clearing its first phase with practiced ease and efficiency. She mused on the serious issue of youth unemployment, a stark contrast to her own chosen path, which offered a different kind of prosperity. For Hairim, the world of real money trading was a far more appealing prospect than the traditional grind, a sentiment she embraced wholeheartedly. She proudly displayed her character's top-tier gear, a clear indicator of her success and dedication within the virtual realm. She easily generated millions of won each week just from managing her alternate characters, seeing it as a lucrative, automated income stream. After a long session, Hairim stretched, satisfied with her work, considering her gaming endeavors a much more fulfilling homework than any school assignment. She decided it was time to check on her larger operations, a subtle shift in her focus from personal gains to the broader scope of her enterprise. Hairim had established her own unique workshop, a place she had meticulously built to facilitate her unconventional financial strategies. One of her workers, a man with a tired face, diligently played a game, one of many in her carefully constructed system of labor. She viewed her workers as monkeys, a term that underscored her belief that they were essentially free labor, diligently working without traditional compensation. Hiram found the idea of grinding for a conventional job utterly foolish, preferring her method of playing games she enjoyed and engaging in real money trading. Suddenly, her phone vibrated, an incoming call from someone identified as the class president, pulling her away from her gaming reverie. Her expression shifted to one of mild surprise as she listened to the news, a new development demanding her immediate attention. The class president informed her that the homeroom teacher, Kim In, was on his way to her location, an unexpected and potentially troublesome visit. Eom Yejun, the class president, calmly instructed Hiram on the phone, assuring her that he had guided Kim versed An to her. He emphasized that her current situation was different from any past encounters, implying a new level of control over the unfolding events. Hiram listened intently, a subtle blush appearing on her cheeks as she processed Eom Yejun's specific instructions for dealing with the teacher. She was told to offer Kim In a deal, and, following Eom Yejun's guidance, she confidently proposed an astounding sum, 1 billion won. A knowing smirk played on her lips as she presented the offer, fully expecting Kim In to reject such an outlandish proposition. Kim In, however, simply looked back at her, his expression unreadable, not betraying any of the anticipated outrage or immediate refusal. Hiram's plan, which included Kim the First An getting angry and being subdued by uncles on other floors, was suddenly thrown into disarray. To her utter astonishment, Kim In accepted her offer, a response that left her completely speechless and confused. He confirmed his acceptance, showing no hesitation, leaving Hiram stammering as she tried to comprehend his unexpected decision. He then inquired about the time frame she would need to prepare such a substantial amount of money. Still reeling from his acceptance, Hiram hesitantly suggested that she could manage to gather the billion won within approximately 1 week. Kim In agreed without further negotiation, the terms of their unexpected deal now firmly established between them. He declared that if he received the billion won in a week, he would completely halt his quest for revenge, a statement that seemed too simple to be true. Hiram's eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face as she considered the sheer magnitude of the money and the potential implications of his promise. Kim In's parting words were a firm directive, instructing her to ensure the money was indeed prepared, leaving her with a daunting task. Kim An walked away, leaving Hiram alone in the quiet aftermath of their strange negotiation, the weight of his departure settling heavily. She sighed in relief, the immediate tension dissipating, but the colossal sum of 1 billion won still loomed large in her mind. The class president, Eom Yejun, expressed his disbelief to another associate, stunned that Kim In had actually accepted the deal. He questioned Kim In's motives, convinced that such a large sum wouldn't sway the teacher, suspecting a hidden agenda. Eom Yejun insisted that Kim In was not the kind of person to be easily swayed by a mere billion won, certain there was a deeper, ulterior motive at play. His associate, however, seemed less concerned, understanding the true capabilities of Hiram's operation. The associate then revealed to Eom Yejun that Hiram herself had set the outrageous amount, not him. Eom Yejun was taken aback, unable to grasp why Hiram would choose such a ridiculously high figure without his direct instruction. His associate calmly explained that there was no need for Eom Yejun to worry, as Hiram's workshop was far more lucrative than he realized. The monthly profit generated by Hiram's workshop was an impressive 30 million won, a sum that surprised Eom Yejun. Hiram began instructing her monkeys, announcing a week-long push to extract maximum value from all their game assets. Her first command was to immediately take control of prime hunting grounds, focusing on maps where valuable field bosses spawned. Her workers listened with focused intensity, ready to execute her meticulous and aggressive market manipulation strategy. She detailed her plan to maintain market prices through wash trading to avoid giving the impression of a large-scale currency release. Eom Yejun elaborated further, explaining that Hiram could easily liquidate her current cash holdings and hoarded items. He emphasized that for someone with her resources, raising 1 billion won in a single week was not an impossible feat. His explanation solidified his belief that Hiram possessed the means to meet such a demand, despite its initial absurdity. Hiram, meanwhile, began to mentally inventory her own stashed items, contemplating which ones to sell to contribute to the massive sum. She remembered her collection of limited edition cosmetic items, realizing their potential value in this urgent situation. A confident smile returned to her face, reassured by her long history of playing games since elementary school, knowing her accumulated assets would pay off. Suddenly, her computer screen began to lag, the character selection taking an unusually long time to load, causing a flicker of irritation. Her eyes narrowed as she stared at the frozen character selection screen, a growing sense of unease starting to creep in. She finally saw her characters, and a wave of pure shock washed over her as she realized every single one was completely naked. A primal scream of fury escaped her lips as she pounded the keyboard. Her meticulously accumulated wealth of in-game gear utterly vanished. All the gear she had painstakingly acquired for her characters and for her workers was inexplicably gone. Her hands shook as she stared at the screen, a profound sense of violation and loss consuming her. What happens next changes everything, and nobody sees it coming. Hirim, a dedicated gamer, stared in disbelief at her favorite characters now stripped naked in the game world. Her hands clenched into furious fists over the keyboard, a wave of shock and anger washing over her. Her face contorted in a mix of horror and rage, unable to comprehend the sudden, devastating loss. She slammed her hands down, the sound echoing the despair bubbling up inside her. The memories of countless hours and immense investments flooded her mind as she recalled the money spent on their gear. Every option roll, every first clear title, everything she had poured into these virtual lives now seemed to vanish. To her, these weren't just game characters, they were her very life, a precious escape she had built with painstaking effort. Yet, there was a time when gaming brought pure joy. A younger Hiram celebrated a chapter clear with bright eyes. Her dad, a game developer himself, had been her first gaming partner, guiding her through levels with simple tricks. She adored playing with him, wishing she could skip school and spend every single day lost in their shared virtual worlds. Her dad, with his perpetually tired eyes and scruffy beard, would chuckle, agreeing he wanted the same despite his playful protests. Their bond was forged over pixels and boss battles, a precious memory of a father and daughter immersed in their own world. But then, a phone call shattered the quiet evening, pulling her dad back to the urgent demands of his job. His face tightened with worry as he learned of a critical issue with the game's gacha rates, a problem he had warned them about. Little Hiram cried out, heartbroken that their game time was cut short, pleading with him not to leave. They hadn't even played for an hour, and her innocent request to continue playing tugged at his heart. He turned, his shoulders heavy with responsibility, trying to reassure her with a strained smile. He promised he would be right back, urging her to continue through the story without him. But the words, "I'll be right back," filled her with a profound, chilling anxiety. It was the same line spoken by Oben, a protagonist's ally in their game, who went off to fight alone and never reappeared. Just like Oben, her dad never truly came back, leaving a void that echoed the tragic game narrative. Weeks turned into months, and her mom's worried whispers about his absence became a grim reality. The gaming industry, her mom explained, was a brutal, unforgiving world, especially in Korea. Then, one evening, the familiar sound of a door opening brought a surge of hope, and Hiram rushed to greet him. She was overjoyed, asking if he was finally home from work, her face alight with anticipation. Her dad had returned, but something was off. His smile was forced, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. He tried to look cheerful, praising her progress in the game, but the weariness was undeniable. Hiram, observant even as a child, noticed how sleepy he looked, her brow furrowing with concern. He quickly denied it, insisting he wasn't tired and had clocked out early just to play with her. That night, they played games together, just like old times, but the joy was tinged with an unspoken sadness. He guided her through boss battles, even as he admitted to being out of potions and low on gauge. She still found his game incredibly fun, telling him she wanted to join his company and make games like him someday. He gently told her she would need to study hard for that, a hint of melancholy in his voice. Though studying wasn't her favorite, she promised to try her best, her eyes shining with youthful determination. He watched her, a silent weight on his heart, knowing the path he was on was not one he wished for her. He placed a hand on her head, a tender gesture that belied the dark circles under his eyes. He confessed he hadn't studied hard enough to become a director, a subtle warning for her future. She looked up at him, still innocent to the burdens he carried, her promise unwavering. Her gaze was full of trust, a reflection of the hero she saw in him despite his flaws. Then, a sudden nosebleed stained his face, a stark visual of his deteriorating health. He brushed it off as nothing, a mere inconvenience, and excused himself to the bathroom. But the calls kept coming, pulling him back to the office, to the crisis he couldn't escape. 3 days later, the family gathered in solemn black, a funeral wreath marking the end of his struggle. Her dad had died, his life claimed by cardiovascular disease, a direct consequence of relentless overwork. The company, however, refused to acknowledge his death as an industrial accident, shifting the blame. They even pinned the gang's gacha manipulation scandal, the very issue that had consumed him, on her dead father. Hyrim had learned a harsh lesson: a hard-working life, in the end, only made you an idiot. She vowed to live differently, to run her game accounts for the rest of her life, avoiding the fate of her dad. So, when her precious characters were stripped naked, her mind immediately went to the culprit, Kim Sung-un, her homeroom teacher. She couldn't fathom how he'd managed to wipe her account so quickly, given he'd only left a few hours ago. The answer lay with Shin Ye-hui, the director of Fast Agency, a figure known in the underworld. Kim Sung-un had approached her, requesting a rather unusual task that raised Shin Ye-hui's eyebrows. She was frankly disappointed, expecting a more significant display of his professional loan shark moves. The Fast Agency, she implied, usually handled more substantial requests, as long as the fee was paid. She found it almost embarrassing to charge an employee of Chung-hong for such a minor job. But Kim Sang-an was far from finished. He had one more, far more impactful request. Shin Ye-hui looked at him, an air of curiosity replacing her earlier disappointment. Back in her workshop, Hyrim rallied her team, instructing them to speed up their wash trading cycles. Her priority was securing the 1 billion won, the money she needed, even if it meant being obvious. She would worry about her stripped items later. The immediate goal was to accumulate wealth. But then, a panic cry erupted from one of her team members, freezing Hyrim in her tracks. His items were gone, completely wiped, a devastating blow to their operation. Hyrim couldn't believe it, demanding if he was serious, her mind racing. Then another and another reported the same thing. All their accounts, all their items, were gone. Hyrim stared in utter despair, realizing everything, even the untradeable items, had been wiped clean. At Fast Agency, Shin Ye-hui confirmed the job was done. All 50 of Hyrim's workshop accounts had been wiped. She smiled, recognizing the familiar, thorough style of a true loan shark. Kim Sang-an had effectively blocked Hyrim's only means of making money, cutting off her lifeline. He had given her 1 week, a cruel deadline, to experience firsthand the hellish reality of debt. What happens next will force Hyrim to confront the true price of her family's legacy. Hyrim's world had just been shattered, her carefully built life in online games wiped away in an instant. The chaos around her was deafening, as everyone else shared her sudden, devastating loss. The desperate cries of fellow gamers echoed through the room, their efforts and time stolen without warning. In the midst of the panic, she was roughly seized, the harsh demand for an extended deadline ringing in her ears. A frantic mob pressed in, their voices rising in a desperate chorus, all denying responsibility for the impossible debt. Her own pleas for more time were swallowed by the fear, the weight of the situation crushing her spirit. The man's raw terror was a mirror of everyone's inner turmoil, begging for mercy from an unseen force. She could only bite her lip, a silent scream of frustration and confusion building inside her. The reality of their shared plight settled over her, a collective despair that left her breathless. All her virtual possessions, her hours of grinding, her entire digital existence, had simply vanished. A chilling realization dawned on her, that everything she had worked for was truly gone. Her despair quickly turned to rage, directed at the homeroom teacher she believed was behind this cruel trick. But even amidst her anger, a flicker of hope ignited as she remembered another path. A single, calculating thought broke through the panic, focusing her resolve on what she still possessed. A sly smile crept onto her face as she opened an old, forgotten game on her mobile. The memory of her past successes in that game filled her with a renewed, almost giddy confidence. This was her legendary character, Go Diok Pal, an account from her middle school days. With this, she knew she could still win, still make the money she desperately needed. Her determination was absolute. She would farm this game relentlessly, day and night. Her mother's gentle reminders to sleep went unheard, drowned out by the urgency of her mission. She even continued her relentless grind while walking to school, oblivious to her surroundings. Her mobile gaming followed her everywhere, even into the classroom where she played beneath her desk. The exhaustion was evident, but the thought of the growing debt kept her pushing forward. She snapped at a fellow student who tried to distract her focus solely on the game. He simply shook his head, unable to understand the depth of her desperate obsession. Unbeknownst to her, the homeroom teacher observed her every move, a silent, unsettling presence. He continued his lessons as if nothing was amiss, allowing her to believe she was escaping his notice. There was a chilling calculation in his gaze, a hint of a deeper, more complex scheme at play. Days blurred into one another as she toiled, each passing hour bringing her closer to her goal. Finally, on the 6th night, she collapsed from exhaustion after completing her weekly raids. Even in her sleep, a triumphant smirk played on her lips, convinced she had outsmarted her teacher. She had calculated her earnings meticulously, certain that her combined efforts would yield the full billion. Her mobile game alone would secure the massive sum, with a comfortable 5 million left over. She was the queen of real money trading, and no one, especially not that teacher, could stop her. A loading screen appeared, promising the culmination of her week-long sleepless efforts. But as the screen finally loaded, a wave of confusion washed over her. Her powerful armored character stood before her, stripped bare of all its valuable gear. The week of relentless sacrifice, the skipped meals, the lost sleep, all for nothing. Her desperate cries of why echoed in the silent room, a raw outburst of utter devastation. Kim Sang-un, the homeroom teacher, sat calmly with a woman, discussing his ruthless methods. He explained his classic tactic, a calculated delay designed to trap his victim completely. The woman listened, a hint of boredom in her expression, urging him to get to the point. He calmly lit a cigarette, his explanation revealing a deeper, more sinister understanding of human nature. Her patience was wearing thin, but she recognized the cold, effective logic in his words. He spoke of the paradox of being a loan shark, where sometimes, to collect, you must first let the debt grow. A subtle shift in her expression showed she was beginning to appreciate the depth of his cruelty. Back in her own world, Gahairim ran, the final minutes of her deadline ticking away. She refused to be beaten, her anger fueling a desperate last-ditch plan. She would revert to Eom Yejun's plan, a dangerous gamble involving the loan sharks. These were violent criminals from another region, men who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. Her teacher's life would be the price for his malicious hack, a brutal exchange for her ruined future. As she raced up the dark stairwell, something wet underfoot gave her pause. The dim light made it hard to see, but a strange, unsettling dampness clung to the air. Then, a chilling realization struck her, far more terrifying than any debt. This was not water. A thick, dark liquid streamed down the steps. The horrifying truth was undeniable. The stairs were slick with fresh blood. Her breath caught in her throat, the sheer terror of the scene paralyzing her. At the top of the stairs, the homeroom teacher stood amidst a gruesome tableau, his eyes fixed on her. The bodies of the loan sharks lay broken around him, their tattoos a stark contrast to the crimson stains. 7 days had passed, and the debt was still due, but the cost had become something far more terrible. With a chilling calm, he demanded the blood money, his true nature finally revealed in the carnage.